Chapter 497. After Yushu fell asleep, Shui Rui quietly left. He boarded a sedan in the back street and returned to the Shui estate. Hataku, who was chatting with a few manservants at the second gate, saw someone enter the courtyard. He hurriedly threw the melon seeds in his hand back onto the plate, dusted off his hands and trotted forward. He pulled out a large fan from behind his waist and fanned Shui Rui as he said, "Young master, why did you come back in the middle of the afternoon? It's so hot outside." Shui Rui glanced at him, not minding that he had come out to play instead of staying in the inner courtyard. Has grandfather returned? As Shui Rui's personal manservant, Hataku had an extremely good relationship with the servants of the Shui estate. He also loved to run around, so he knew all the big and small matters of the minister's estate even without going out. Hataku even knew Shui Lingnan's whereabouts. Great Scholar Song invited the master to Lu Feng restaurant for tea. He's not in the estate right now. Shui Rui nodded, then casually asked, "Did Dr. Zhou come to my mother's place today?" Shui Lingnan had never advocated for Shui Rui to go to the West Court. Thus, while Madame Shui had been ill, he hadn't even gone to the inner courtyard to see her. "Madame seems to be better these days. I haven't seen Dr. Zhou come to see her." Hataku cautiously observed Shui Rui's complexion. Seeing that there was no one around, he ingratiatingly said, "Great Scholar is not in the estate. Young master, why don't you go see Madame? I'll keep watch for you." Meddlesome. Shui Rui patted the back of his head. His eyes were unruffled as if unmoved. He passed through the east corridor and returned to his residence. An hour later, outside the small courtyard next to the West Court's ancestral hall, Shui Rui was dressed in the pine green gown he had just changed into. His hair was neatly wrapped in a square scarf, revealing his handsome and scholarly features. His refined appearance caused the maid guarding the courtyard to blush. By the time she recovered, he was already inside. Madame Shui had lived next to the ancestral hall for more than 10 years. The wutong tree in the courtyard had grown from a sapling to a height above the walls. Shui Rui still remembered that whenever he had the chance to visit his mother, Madame Shui would take him to the courtyard to water the tree. She had coaxed him that when the tree grew, he could see her every day. Now the tree had grown to the point where he had to look up, but his mother's promise had been destroyed 3 years ago. He had personally destroyed it. "Young master." The maidservant that was dozing off in the hall woke up with a start when she heard the sound of the curtains moving, and she exclaimed in surprise when she saw the person that arrived was Shui Rui. "Mother is awake?" "Young master, please wait a moment." The maid hurriedly tugged on her skirt, stood up, and tiptoed into the inner room. Shui Rui stood at the door, listening to the faint sounds of conversation coming from within. In a few moments, the maid retreated and pursed her lips into a smile. "Young master, come in. Madam is awake." Saying this, she walked to the door. "This servant will stand guard outside." Shui Rui nodded and entered the room. The room was not large. There was a bed, a couch, a dressing table, and a cabinet. It was so simple that it did not seem at all like the living quarters of the lady of the first branch of the Shui estate. Madame Shui was sitting up on the couch, a thin blanket covering her knees. Her eyes were slightly open, unfocused as they gazed in the direction of the door. A smile hung on her sickly face as she slowly extended her hand. "Ruier." Shui Rui's footsteps paused. His gaze swept over her face and he inwardly sighed in relief. He then quickly walked to her side, tightly grasped her hand and sat down next to her. A bright smile appeared on his face, not caring that Madame Shui could not see it. "Mother, your son has been busy with official business these past few days and was unable to visit Mother. I've missed Mother." "It's not a problem. It's good that you were able to come." Madame Shui patted the back of his hand and then pinched his arm. Her brow slightly creased. She said, "You've gotten thinner again. You've worked hard, but you still have to obediently eat your meals. Don't think that just because I can't see you I don't know." Shui Rui made a sound of assent, but he did not say that the last time he came to visit her, the weather had been cold and he had been wearing thick clothes. Now that the weather was hot and he had taken off his clothes, he naturally felt thinner. Madame Shui was just like any other mother. She pulled him over and chattered for a while, mostly about Father Shui. "At the time, your father was the prefectural magistrate of Yang. He was also busy from day to night as if there was no end to his work. In the first year he lost a great deal of weight, but he was quite spirited. When he returned to the capital after his term was over, he found it hard to sleep. Every day he would go to the morning court at the 5 o'clock and wake up at the 4 o'clock. Shui Rui seemed to carelessly interject. "Father returned to the capital when I was 2 years old. Mother, Did you hear about the matter of Yunhua Ez and Crown Princess Liue? Madame Xue tilted her head, closed her eyes and thought back. I did hear about it, but by the time we returned to the capital, those two had already passed away, so I had no chance to meet them. That year Xue Rui's father Xue Zhao was still alive. The two of them were loving and harmonious, and Madame Xue's health had not yet collapsed. Old Minister Xue did not confine her to the West Court like he did now. Counting the years, Xue Rui knew that his parents had never met Yunhua, but he did not feel disappointed. Instead he asked, "Then mother, have you ever heard that this Yunhua Yi's son had a first wife in his hometown?" Madame Xue did not seem to remember the events of 10-odd years ago. She furrowed her brow and thought for a long time, then forcefully grabbed Xue Rui's hand and said, "Yes, when I was young I faintly heard a few rumors. They said that this Ez had once publicly defied His Majesty's decree and refused to become the Emperor's son-in-law. It seemed like they said that he already had a wife." Xue Rui's spirit rose, thinking that his mother had a very good memory when she was sober. There was no mistake. Then the story told by the storyteller in the tea house was most likely true. Then what happened later? Why did he marry a princess? Who knows? Perhaps he coveted royal power and riches, or perhaps he changed his mind after seeing someone else. Isn't there a saying in the books, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman? Madame Xue smiled coldly. One could vaguely make out the elegance of her youth on her pale face, but she was blind, so she could not see just what sort of grace those eyes had held 10 years ago. Seeing the sadness on her face, Xue Rui did not dare to ask any more questions, afraid that he would bring up her sad past and cause her to fall into hysteria again. As a result, he changed the topic. "Mother, your son has someone he admires." Madame Xue froze, then joy and curiosity appeared on her face. Pushing his hand, she urged, "When did this happen? Which family's young lady? Did she tell your grandfather to send someone to propose marriage?" After living in seclusion for 10-some years, Madame Xue had long since lost the authority and self-awareness of a mother. She did not even dare to think that she could make the decision on her son's marriage. Xue Rui's eyes flashed as he chuckled. "She is a person from Yang, not a female master of disguise from a noble clan. Last year she took the Dian exam and is a famous female fortune-teller. She is intelligent and knows how to handle affairs. She also has a younger brother at home, and she is a person who cares about the old and cherishes the young. I still haven't mentioned it to my grandfather, so I'll talk to mother first." Hearing this, Madame Xue's face alternated between smiling and worried. As a girl, it's best for her to be educated and reasonable. I don't have any ideas. If you like it, tell your grandfather as soon as possible so that you don't miss out on a good marriage. And your son is attentive. Madame Xue patted the back of his hand and sighed. Your father and I were husband and wife for several years, but in the end, we only have one child. Your father is gone, but even if I have a single breath left, I still want to see you start a family and hold a grandson. Only then can I close my eyes in peace." Hearing these words, Xue Rui's face darkened. He tightly pursed his lips and carefully grasped Madame Xue's ice-cold hand. Pressing it against his forehead, he softly said, "It was your son who was unfilial." Madame Xue seemed not to hear his words. Blinking her empty eyes, she continued to warmly smile at him. As Xue Rui gazed at her, he felt a wave of pain in his heart. 3 years ago she had gone crazy. When she awoke, she no longer remembered Jin Sun. All she knew was that he was her son, so she could not see Jin Sun, or else her illness would relapse. He could still come here a few times a year, but Jin Sun had not been able to see his birth mother since 3 years ago. This was a sin he had committed, but he didn't know whether or not he would be able to repay it while they were still alive. By the time Yushu woke up, it was already dusk. She lay alone in the cool and ventilated courtyard. Opening her eyes several times, she still felt that it was somewhat unreal. She had actually told Xue Rui everything in one breath. Rubbing her swollen head, she sat up cross-legged and slowly recalled the details. Suddenly she giggled. "Ha, I've been vexed for several days for nothing. It's much easier to say it out loud." She stretched and stepped on her shoes. Just as she got off the bed, Xiao Qing and Xiao Dai, who had been standing guard outside, heard the noise and entered. "Miss, you're awake. Drink some tea and wash your face." Yushu felt refreshed. Returning to her room on the second floor, she changed out of her wrinkled clothes and asked, "Did my eldest brother say that he would be back tonight?" Xiao Qing squatted in front of her and smoothed out her belt, replying, "Young master said that he wouldn't be coming tonight. He told Miss to eat first before leaving." Yushu was not a clingy person. Hearing these words, she was only disappointed for a moment before continuing to do what she had to do. After dinner, Yushu returned home and asked the concierge. Knowing that He Fangji had returned early today, she remembered what she had promised Yu Xiaoxiu the day before, so she didn't even return to the house and went straight to Zhao Hui's courtyard. Yifangji and Zhao Hui were playing with their son in the room. Yushu came in and sat down. She hugged He Xiaochuan and mentioned that she wanted Yu Xiaoxiu to recognize them as his godparents. The first to nod and agree was He Fangji. Even if you didn't say it, I was going to mention this to you. You two siblings, one calls me father and the other calls me uncle. Not to mention that it's hard to pronounce, you two have drifted apart for no reason. Parents were biased. If Zhao Hui doted on Yushu more, then He Fangji undoubtedly liked to bring Yu Xiaoxiu more. Zhao Hui hesitated and said, "It's a good thing, but have you asked your mother about this?" "Of course I've asked before I came to tell my parents. Xiaoxiu is also happy to be your godson. My mother is not a good person. In the future when Xiaoxiu grows up, there will be no elders to teach him. Even marriage will be difficult. My mother understands this." Chapter 498. I don't know about that. I only know that the ancient book is called the Book of Mystic Fairy Lu Ren. Yushu was stunned for a moment, and the next moment she blurted out, "Book of Mystic Fairy Lu Ren?" Jing Chen saw her surprised expression, nodded and asked doubtfully, "Is there something wrong?" "No." Yushu quickly restrained her expression but frowned and said to him, "Didn't the Lu Ren divine lesson disappear 100 years ago? Isn't this Book of Mystic Fairy Lu Ren about Lu Ren?" There were many schools of Yi Shui, and they were first derived from the three styles. These three styles were Qimen Duanjia Tai Divine Number and Lu Ren Divine Lesson. Among the three styles, Qimen Duanjia was the most extensive, Tai Divine Number was the most mysterious, and the great Lu Ren revealed the most secrets of heaven, and even threatened the rule of the emperor. Therefore, as early as 100 years ago, the imperial court banned the Yi Shui families from learning or using the Lu Ren Divine Lesson for divination, and destroyed a large number of secret books and articles. As a result, 100 years later the three styles became two styles, and the great Lu Ren was lost. Yushu didn't know what was recorded in the Book of Mystic Fairy Lu Ren, but Taoist Qing Zheng solemnly entrusted her to find and destroy it. Now that she knew that the book Qing Zheng asked her to find turned out to be the origin of the great calamity and the life breaker, and played a decisive role in the whole thing that happened to her, how could she not be surprised? "I'm not very sure about that." Jing Chen couldn't continue to answer Yushu's doubts, because he had only heard Zhu Muzhao mention it twice, and had never seen this ancient book with his own eyes. "Not sure." Yushu narrowed her eyes and suddenly asked, "If that's the case, you haven't seen what's written on it?" "No." Yushu sneered and said aggressively, "Then why do you want me to believe that everything you say is true? The great calamity, the method of breaking one's life, it sounds true, but in the end, everyone has their own mouth, whatever they say is true. You're easy to fool, but I'm not easy to fool." Jing Chen opened his mouth, but he didn't know what to say. He wanted to convince Yushu that what he said was true, but even he couldn't help but have some doubts at this moment. What was written in the Book of Mystic Fairy's 6 Rens? When Yushu saw that Jing Chen had lost his confidence, her eyes flashed. She stood up from the ground and mocked, "Wait until you've read the book with your own eyes, then tell me about it." After saying that, she turned around and left. Jing Chen snapped back to his senses and hurriedly stepped on his shoes, catching up with her at the entrance of the tea house. "I'll see you off." Yushu glanced back at him and walked down the stone steps. Her mind was now filled with thoughts on how to get the Book of Mysterious Fairy 6 Rens into her hands. She did not have any extra thoughts to be mean to Jing Chen. If he wanted to give it to her, then let him give it to her. Anyway, she did not need to care about him. Therefore Jing Chen walked beside Yushu, half a step behind her. The two of them walked out of the garden one after another. It was almost noon and they did not meet anyone along the way. Jing Chen did not take the initiative to talk to Yushu. He just turned his head to look at her from time to time, thinking about Yushu's last words. They walked all the way to the entrance of the library before Jing Chen called out to her again. "Xiaoyu." Yushu stopped and turned her head to see what he was going to say. "Don't worry." Jing Chen looked up at the corner of the street and lowered his voice, "I'll figure it out first." Yushu raised her eyebrows. When she saw the details on his face, she remembered that there would be people following her when she left the library. She guessed that Jing Chen had told her so many secrets without permission. He was also afraid that the person above would find out and harm her. His mood was a little complicated. "I'm leaving." In the end, she said goodbye faintly and walked to the shady place under the tea house across the street, waiting for Lu Zhong's carriage to pick her up. However, Jing Chen did not turn back. Instead, he stood at the entrance of the library, motionless under the scorching sun, until he saw her get on the carriage and leave. And this scene was seen by a figure in the tea house. Yu Shu went to the Wangji Tower. She had gained a lot from meeting Jing Chen today. She needed a quiet and undisturbed place to properly reflect on what she had learned today. However, she did not expect that Shui Rui would also be there. "Hey, why do you still have time to come here?" Shui Rui had just changed his clothes and came out of the bedroom. He saw Yu Shu and heard her doubts, so he smiled at her. "Why not? I don't have any official duties with me. I only need to go to the yamen for a few days. There's nothing else." Yu Shu blinked and asked him, "Have you found out about the 10th princess's horoscope?" Shui Rui shook his head. "Then why don't you go and find out? What are you doing here?" Shui Rui couldn't help but laugh, and now he understood what she was bewildered about. So he walked forward and casually closed the 2 doors behind her, and then he held her warm little hand and brought her to sit on the old yellow pearwood couch that was newly changed, and then he placed a bowl of longan plum soup that had been poured on the tea table into her hand. "One thing is another. I can ask others to do the task of inquiring about the news, but I can't ask others to do it for you." The weather was scorching hot, and Yu Shu was drinking the warm and cool plum soup. When she heard him speak like this, it was as if a pot of perfectly cold icy spring had been poured into her heart, and it was extremely comfortable. She was still worried about Shui Rui's romantic calamity last night, and she actually wasn't overly suspicious now. She looked up at Shui Rui's clear eyebrows, and the corners of her mouth curved into a smile. She snorted, "Just pick something nice to listen to. I have nothing to do with you, but you and someone else will have something to do soon." Shui Rui heard that there was a hidden meaning in her words, so he sat up straight and put on an appearance of listening attentively. "Oh, why do you say this?" Yu Shu drank a mouthful of sweet and sour plum soup and sucked a cord longan in her mouth. As she chewed, she said, "Guess what Princess Shiwen wants from you?" "You mean Shiwen?" Frowning his brows, Shui Rui replied, "It's not that I haven't thought about it, but she's been pampered since she was born, and everything goes according to her wishes. I really can't think of anything that she would ask of me that I can help her with, but no one else can." Yu Shu glanced at his face with a faint smile. "You really can't think of it? I don't believe that you don't know what she has in mind for you. Think about it again." Shui Rui's eyelids twitched as if he had grasped something. His eyes flickered a few times and he slowly tightened his face. "It's the gentleman's banquet of hibiscus?" Yu Shu couldn't help but praise him for his intelligence. As a teacher, she had her own methods of seeking good fortune and avoiding disaster. Shui Rui was just a scholar and he could rely on his brain to deduce all kinds of things. In terms of scheming, she didn't think she was any worse than him, but in terms of brains she was slightly inferior. "Yesterday, I divined for you, and on the 6th of June, there will be a disaster of love on you. After thinking about it, only Princess Shiwen is the cause of this disaster. The so-called disaster of love refers to an undesirable marriage. There is a rule at the gentleman's banquet of hibiscus. She is 80% sure that she will get the golden jade hibiscus, so she will threaten you first, and then she will take the opportunity to propose conditions for you to accept. It all depends on whether you fall into the trap or not." Shui Rui's face darkened. He didn't think about this before because he didn't think that Shiwen would be so daring. "You don't know, but a few months ago, Prince of Dongjing, who is guarding the north, sent a letter to the capital to ask for a noble girl. His Majesty has the intention of marrying Shiwen far away to appease the northeast. He also leaked this information to the Prince of Xiang, so Shiwen must have heard about it. This marriage is most likely set." The more Shui Rui thought about it, the more certain he became. Shiwen had this idea to avoid marrying far away, so his expression became worse. Yu Shu was stunned when she heard this. She didn't think that there would be such a plot. That Shiwen was really daring. She clearly knew the emperor's intentions but still dared to scheme. Wasn't this indirectly defying the imperial edict? After a short moment of surprise, she thought of herself and couldn't help but laugh at herself. What she was doing now, wasn't it the same as going against the emperor? And compared to Shi Wen's rebellion, the situation was much more serious. Her thoughts changed and she looked at Shui Rui. With a bit of a tentative mood she asked him, "She implicated you like this, are you angry with her?" Shui Rui also didn't notice Yu Shu's strange expression at this time. He frowned and said, "She dared to do this because she wanted to drag me into the water. I used to accommodate her like Jin Sun. I really don't know when she became so selfish and hateful." His words were originally directed at Shi Wen, but in Yu Shu's ears, it somehow had a different meaning. It seemed like he was blaming her for dragging him into this storm because she was unwilling to submit to her fate. "I'm sorry." An apology came out from her mouth. "What?" Shui Rui turned his head to look at her. He didn't hear what she said just now. Yushu squeezed out a smile at him and said, "I also feel that she is hateful. She doesn't want to follow other people's arrangements, but wants to make things difficult for you." But Shui Rui wasn't so easy to fool. He stared at her for a moment, and no one knew what he was thinking in his dark eyes. He suddenly said, "Then do you think I'm hateful? 3 years ago, I also schemed against His Majesty for my own selfishness. In order to become the princess's son-in-law and also to get rid of my official career, I dared to plot against His Majesty's arranged marriage. In the end, 10th princess died and Jinshuan was also implicated. At that time, I didn't think that 10th princess would be in any trouble." Yushu didn't expect him to change to this topic. But seeing the strong self-mockery on his face, it was clear that he couldn't let go of the past. After a short silence, she took the initiative to press the back of his hand and said, "To be honest, you were a little selfish at that time, but you are different from Shiwen. She clearly knew how much trouble it would bring you, but she still did it knowingly. But you didn't expect that someone would dare to harm the princess, so the ignorant are not guilty. I don't think you are hateful. Because she was also a selfish person. She would only think for herself first." Shui Rui's eyes softened because her words warmed his heart. The next moment, he turned his wrist and wrapped his big hand around her slender palm. He put it on his knee and asked in a low voice, "Ah Shu, tell me honestly, are you hiding something from me?" Chapter 499. "Ah Shu, tell me honestly, are you hiding something from me?" Yushu looked at Shui Rui's worried eyes and knew that he had seen something. She moved her lips and subconsciously wanted to play dumb with him. "It's nothing. Why should I hide it from you?" "Really?" Shui Rui didn't believe it. He raised his hand and his slender index finger gently stroked her soft eyebrows and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Do you know that when you lie, here and here will not move at all? You look serious on the surface, but I don't know what you are thinking in your heart. You don't want to tell me. Do you want me to guess?" Yushu's heart skipped a beat. She turned her head and avoided his hand. She laughed and said, "No, don't guess randomly." Shui Rui put down his hand with a smile and held his chin. He stared at her with twinkling eyes and said slowly, "When you came to the Supreme Judiciary to find me that time, there was something wrong. Later I thought about it. You should have something to say to me that day, but I was so busy that I didn't mention it. 2 days later, I was free and went to see you at home at night. You were even more wrong. You were obviously in trouble, but you deliberately pretended to be fine in front of me for fear that I would notice something. If I'm not wrong, you were worried that something would implicate me." Yushu listened to his logical analysis and guessed that he was almost right. Her scalp tightened. "You don't go to many places on weekdays. In addition to Wangji Tower, there is Taishu Shuyuan. I know the things in Wangji Tower like the back of my hand. You are in trouble, but I don't know, so it must be in Taishu Shuyuan. I have 2 guesses about what happened in Taishu Shuyuan and who could make things difficult for you and make you worry about me and dare not tell me. One is Han Wenguang and the other is Jing Qin." And Shui Rui looked at her slightly changed expression. He paused and sighed softly, "Looks like it's the latter." At this point, Yushu realized that she couldn't hide it from him anymore. She looked at Shui Rui with complicated feelings and bit her lips. "Why do you have to be so smart? Since you know that I didn't tell you because I was afraid of implicating you, why do you still keep asking?" Shui Rui narrowed his eyes and sneered. "You're the one who's afraid, not me." He didn't know when he had become a coward. In the end, it was because she didn't believe him. Yushu's heart was beating fast again. She lowered her head under his intense gaze. After a moment of silence, she said helplessly, "Yes, I'm afraid. Jing Chen's matter involves a lot. If I'm not careful, I might even lose my life. I have to get involved in this mess, but you don't have to be involved because of me. Just like you regret that you made the 10th princess be murdered that year, I'm also afraid that you will regret it in the future." Shui Rui frowned when he heard this. It was obvious that the matter was even more serious than he'd imagined, yet he didn't have the slightest intention of shrinking back. Instead, he took a deep breath and stretched out his hand to hold her chin, and then he turned her faintly sorrowful face towards him and said to her with a serious expression, "Since it's so dangerous, you should tell me. It's fine if I don't know, but I guessed it. How can I pretend that I don't know and let you deal with it alone? Shu, let me ask you, what kind of person do you think I am? Do you think that I got along with you just for a moment of pleasure? Didn't I tell you that I want to marry you and that I'm willing to grow old with you?" These questions caused Yushu's heartstrings to be in disorder, and how could she not be moved when she heard every single word of his that touched on her heart and revealed the truth? She suddenly noticed that the problem that troubled her earlier wasn't a problem at all. Whether Shui Rui was willing to advance and retreat with her or not, it was something that should be decided by him, and it wasn't something that she could decide for him. Thinking about this, she felt a burst of shame in her heart. Her love for Shui Rui was not as good as his love for her. Brother, her throat was choked and she could only say, "I'm sorry." Seeing her bitter look, Shui Rui's heart softened a little. He let go of her chin and raised his hand to flick her forehead gently. "What are you apologizing for? Hurry up and tell me what exactly happened." Yushu rarely wavered. Since she wanted to tell him, she had to make it clear to him. As for where to start, she lowered her eyes and thought for a while before she said, "Do you still remember the time when I broke up with Jingchen?" Shui Rui thought for a moment. "Is it the day I confessed to you?" He still remembered that 2 months ago, Yushu held a banquet in Wangji Tower for the nomination of Dian. She went back first in the evening and he went later. He saw her and Jingchen separated at the door. It was Yushu's sad look at that time that stimulated his nerves, and he confessed his feelings to her impulsively. However, until now he still did not know what happened between Yushu and Jingchen that night, so that they became strangers and no longer contacted each other. Yushu nodded, smiled at him first and then said coldly, "That night I left Wangji Tower alone and was stopped by Jingchen. On a bridge in the south of the city, he broke up with me and said that we would have nothing to do with each other from now on." Shui Rui was slightly stunned. He could not imagine that Jingchen would do such a treacherous thing. He had seen how good Yushu was to Jingchen from the beginning to the end. He was not afraid to say some sour words. Even if she treated him now, it was not half as good as she treated Jingchen at the beginning. "You said that he broke up with you on his own initiative? Why did he do that?" Yushu was silent for a moment. She had known Jingchen's secret for a long time, but she did not reveal it to others. Even Yu Xiaoxiu, who was like a brother and sister, did not know anything about it. That was because she sympathized with Jingchen's life experience and was afraid that he would be schemed against by others, so she thought about him wholeheartedly. But what about Jingchen? When he told others that she was the person who lost her life, did he care about her safety? It had always been you being heartless and I being unjust. Since he did not care about her life and death, why should she keep the secret for him? That is because Jingchen's life experience hides a big secret. Secret. At this time, Shui Rui's curiosity was completely aroused. He pondered and said, "The murder case in Taisher Library shows that someone is secretly scheming against Jingchen. Is it related to his secret?" Yushu admitted and said, "That's right. If there is no conspiracy, why would there be a need to go through so much trouble to target him? And Jingchen is the only son left behind by Yun Huai and the eldest princess. The emperor really favors him. Will he send him to the deep mountains to cultivate for more than 10 years? Shui Rui nodded and said, "This matter is puzzling. Although the imperial edict claims that Jingchen followed his mother's instructions and went to the Taoist sect to fulfill his vows, I don't think that is the case. How can a baby who is not even a year old be sent to the mountains?" Then he changed the topic and asked in confusion, "What secret do you think he has that he has to break up with you and put you in prison now?" Yushu laughed at herself. Chapter 500. The so-called Great Calamity is a person who is tied to the rise and fall of a dynasty. His fate is presented to the fate of the country. This person was born to face disaster, and his fate is the star of calamity. There must be a righteous person who will use his life to pay for his fate. Otherwise he will die young. However, just living his life is not enough for peace. There must be a person who can break his fate to break his life. Jingchen is the great calamity of this generation. When Shui Rui first heard about this secret, his first thought was that it was absurd. However, he knew that Yushu would not speak without evidence, so it must be true. This time he was shocked. After a long silence, he asked Yushu, "When did you know about it?" In fact, he wanted to ask how long she had been hiding such a heavy matter. The great calamity, this was probably a shocking secret that would bring about the calamity of being beheaded just by hearing it. Yushu curled her lips slightly and said self-deprecatingly, "In the beginning, I only knew that Jingchen's fate would bring disaster to the people around him. It was not until Shui Yun came to me during the Double Suns meeting that I heard about Jingchen's shocking life experience for the first time. After that, I was skeptical. It was not until not long ago when Jingchen personally confessed to me that I knew it was true." Shui Rui had a bad feeling. He frowned slightly and asked, "Why did he explain it to you?" "It's funny that the reason he confessed to me was the same reason why he cut ties with me that day." Yu Shu held the armrest and looked at Shui Rui. She said without avoiding his gaze, "He cut ties with me because he was taught since he was a child that before he found the person who broke his fate, he could not act rashly. He could not have love or hatred. Otherwise, he would endanger the lives of the Taoist masters who saved his life more than 10 years ago. You also know that I used to like Jing Qin. It was fine when he lost his memory, but when he recovered it and remembered everything, he could no longer fall in love with me. Do you remember when he was missing? I went to the suburbs to look for him. I lied to you at that time. In fact, not only did I see him, but I also made a promise with him that I would not think about love and only be a close friend. However, when I was nominated by Diane and was in the top 3, he came to me and said that he wanted to break off our relationship. To be honest, after I calmed down, I didn't blame him and could understand his difficulties. If he didn't care about the kindness of raising me, I would look down on him. But she was just disappointed. No matter if it was Ji Xingxuan who had been full of malice towards her and had been framed by her, or Shui Yun who had wholeheartedly tried to kill her and ended up becoming a cripple, Jing Qin always sympathized with those who ended up in a pitiful state, but he did not care about a person like her who had a strong will to win. She did not know if he had ever thought that she was also a woman. No matter how ruthless she was still a woman. Shui Rui finally knew the reason why Jing Qin and Yu Shu suddenly became strangers 2 months ago, but he did not feel relaxed at all. Facing Yu Shu's gloomy eyes, he only felt his heart inexplicably tightened. He could not judge how ruthless Jing Qin was because he was not Jing Qin and did not understand his difficulties. But if there was a person in this world who didn't care whether his background was good or bad, who wouldn't sleep for his safety, who would put his life and death in his hands, who would be happy for him, who would grieve for him, who would suffer for him, then even if he had to face universal condemnation, he wouldn't disappoint this person's heart. He envied Jing Qin for meeting such a person and was glad that he did not miss such a person. Since he cut ties with you, why did he confess to you not long ago? You said it was the same reason. What is the reason? Shui Rui was sensitive that this was the key to the whole thing. I am the person Jing Qin is looking for. Yu Shu said coldly, turned to look at Shui Rui's face and asked, "Don't you think it's funny?" Shui Rui's eyes flashed with a thick black light and said with a straight face, "It's not funny at all. There is something more funny. Do you want to hear it?" Yu Shu's palms, which were holding the armrest, were sweating. She looked calm on the surface, but only she knew that she was nervous now. She really did not know how Shui Rui would react when he heard what happened next. Would he choose to bear the burden with her? Or would he be like Jing Qin, weighing the pros and cons and decisively choose to give her up? Say it. Yu Shu calmed her breath and tried to finish the whole paragraph calmly. If you want to break the destiny of Jing Qin, you need to marry me, the person who broke the destiny, and have children with me. Otherwise, it will endanger the peace of the world, which is not allowed by the imperial order. Shui Rui's face suddenly changed. In an instant, he clenched his fists, widened his eyes and blurted out in disbelief, "It's ridiculous. The righteousness of the country and the rise and fall of the imperial court need to be fulfilled by a woman's life. Isn't this ridiculous?" "Yes, it's ridiculous," Yu Shu sneered. "I don't want to believe it is true, but it's useless for me to not believe it. As long as the emperor believes it, I can't make the decision, and Jing Qin can't make the decision either. Those who can make the decision will not consider for me, a mere commoner. Even Jing Qin, the son of the princess, has to stay in the deep mountains for more than 10 years. It was unknown how much of the record in the Book of Mystery Fairy's 6 Wrens was true, but even if there was only a small possibility, as long as it endangered the fate of the country, the emperor would not take this risk. Not to mention deciding the fate of 1 or 2 people, even if 10 or 100 people died, it would just be a sentence. After the initial injustice, Shui Rui now thought deeply and understood the pros and cons. He could not help but have a cold sweat on his back. After a long time he thought about it a few times, then raised his head and looked deeply at Yu Shu. There was a faint gloominess in his eyes. "Then did you promise him?" "Promise him?" A certain nerve of Yu Shu's was touched. Her eyelids twitched and she asked softly, "Do you think I should promise him?" Shui Rui pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "If you don't promise, are you going to go against the emperor's order? In this situation it's not up to you. It's a matter of life and death. Ashu, you really should promise him." Hearing this, Yu Shu's face immediately stiffened. Her 10 fingers gripped the armrest tightly, almost digging into the wood. She choked on her breath until her eyes were sore. She felt that everyone in the world wanted to betray her, but no one was willing to think for her and pity her innocence. She suddenly stood up, gritted her teeth and ruthlessly looked back at him and sneered, "I'm sorry to disappoint you. I didn't promise him and I won't promise him. Yu Shu may be greedy for life and afraid of death and cherish life like gold, but if I can't live according to my wishes in this world, I'd rather die. What great calamity, what broken life, I only know. I'd rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Shui Rui looked up at her arrogant and unchanging heart. His eyes blurred, his heart beat like a drum, and his mind flashed and emerged. It was the figure of her under the bridge of Yang City that was beaten to a pulp, but she gritted her teeth and did not make a sound. It was the figure of her beating the drum and crying out her grievances and climbing up to the court under the stick. It was the figure of her kneeling in front of the Celestial Commissioner even if she broke her fingers. It was the figure of her standing in the banquet and coldly facing the people who looked up to her. Suddenly the scene changed and it returned to the person before him. He saw her glare fiercely at him before carrying a resolute expression, and then she turned around with the intention of leaving. Shui Rui shuddered with fear, and he practically leaped up from his chair to hug her from behind. Feeling the body in his arms stiffen, he sighed softly and coaxed her in a gentle voice. What are you angry about? It should be me who is angry. What are you angry about? Yu Shu angrily pulled his hand. But Shui Rui did not let go. He held his hand tightly and buried his head in her shoulder, lightly smelling the fragrance of soap on her clothes. His heart had never felt so secure before. You refused him, wasn't it because of me? You didn't want to be with him, wasn't it because you wanted to be with me? If you don't care about me, why do you have to make things difficult for yourself? Even if you were so fierce to me just now, it was because you wanted to get rid of me so that I could stay out of this matter. Ashu, I understand your thoughts, how can I not know what's good for me? Even if Yu Shu was really angry just now, after listening to his words, it was extinguished without a trace. Her arm, which was hanging by her side, moved. She slowly lifted it as if she was lifting 1,000 pounds. She pressed it against his hand and gripped it tightly. She turned her head and stared at him with her bright eyes. Chapter 501. This is what you said. Don't regret it in the future. Hearing her cold voice, Shui Rui chuckles, tightens his arms to hold her thin body in his arms, and says seriously, if you get married and have children with someone else, I will regret it. It is partly because of him that she doesn't want to be the one who breaks her life and stays with Jing Chen. Facing such a woman who dares to love and hate, how can he give her up? As for the risks in the future, she is not afraid, so why should he be afraid? There will always be a way out. Now he only knows that if he lets her go, he will definitely regret it. Shu, don't be afraid. I will think of a way with you. Yu Shu told Shui Rui about the secret of calamity and when she saw Shui Rui's clear attitude, the heavy burden in her heart seemed as if half of it had been lifted off her shoulders, and she instantly felt relaxed. What followed after was a sweet feeling of peace in her heart. At least he didn't disappoint her. Looking at Shui Rui's handsome face in front of her, an idea comes to her mind. She climbs his arm, raises her head, and gently bites his thin and moderate lips. Shui Rui's eyes flicker. He only feels that his lips are bitten by her sharp tiger teeth. There is a little flattery in the intimacy. It is indescribably itchy, as if he is holding a wild cat with its claws in his arms. He can't help but feel pity. The next moment he takes the initiative. He holds Yu Shu's slender nape and lowers his head to bite her mouth. His flexible tongue sweeps over her two sharp teeth and caresses her soft and fragrant mouth. He is not impatient but does not allow her to retreat. Feeling that she is breathing nervously, he gently rubs her neck with his thumb, one by one, to make her relax. After the long kiss ended, Yu Shu buried her head on Shui Rui's shoulder and wrapped her hands around his lean waist as she lightly panted for breath. She licked her lips that were sore from being kissed and bitten by him, and she didn't have the time to think about where he'd learned such teasing methods. Shui Rui caresses her back, calms down the restlessness in his body, clears his throat and says, "Let's have lunch first and then we will discuss how to deal with it." Well, okay. In the afternoon, the two of them went to the courtyard on the 3rd floor. Shui Rui stood at the edge of the feng shui pool at the corner of the balcony, looking down at the colorful lights at the bottom of the pool. Even though he had seen thousands of treasures, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. "This move of yours is really amazing." Yu Shu shook her head. "This is also my first time building this wind pond, so I boldly changed a lot of places. Who would have thought that I would hit the mark by a stroke of luck? Just a few days ago I was discussing with Uncle Pei about selling these crystals and he bought them all." Shui Rui walked over and sat down on the couch beside her. He straightened the hem of his clothes and returned to the topic at hand. According to what you said, His Majesty and the Great Teacher do not intend to expose you, so they found a substitute in the Taisha library with the intention of luring the snake out of its hole and capturing the group of people who were secretly targeting Jing Chen. Yushu nodded and sneered, I'm afraid that Chao Yuling did the same thing before. The people who tried to kill Jing Chen on the river and the people who committed the murder in the Taisha library are the same group. I don't know how they found out about the existence of the Great Calamity, but they want to destroy the fate of this country. They have evil intentions and deserve to be punished. If His Majesty can't uproot this group of people today, how would he dare to expose me, the true master? She was not Jing Chen, who was skilled in martial arts and had a profound cultivation. She lived in the impenetrable princess mansion and was not afraid of being plotted against. In the eyes of the emperor and the great teacher, she was now a weak woman, who did not know anything. In other words, before you kill that group of people, no one can do anything to you. Shui Rui understood the crux of the matter and quickly discovered that Yushu was safe for the time being. That's right. During this period, no one will force me to risk my life for Jing Chen, and no one can touch me. After all, I have a name in the eyes of the current emperor. Yushu turned her head to look at Shui Rui and said hesitantly, Actually, I don't intend to keep it from you. Actually, I don't plan to keep it a secret from you. I'll have to inform you sooner or later. After all, the relationship between us can't be passed to the higher-ups. If we don't pay more attention, both of us will be in trouble. As a person who had lost her life, she had to marry the calamity and have children. This was the right way in the eyes of the current emperor. How could she be entangled with another man in her heart? If Shui Rui insisted on facing it together with her, then the relationship between the two could not be known by outsiders. To put it bluntly, she wanted Shui Rui and her to be a pair of lovers secretly. Shui Rui's face was gloomy for a moment. However, when he saw the guilt and helplessness on Yushu's face, his heart softened. He took her hand and put it on his lap. He narrowed his eyes and said, I still say the same thing. I want to marry you, not just talk. You will be mine sooner or later. I will not be in a hurry. After falling from the clouds to the bottom of the valley for 3 years, he did not lack patience. The worries in Yushu's heart were eased by a single sentence from him, and she felt that she owed Shui Rui even more in her heart. She felt that she hadn't done much for Shui Rui, and since they'd known each other until now, the kindness he'd shown her could be counted in detail, yet she'd always suspected that he came from a wealthy background, so he couldn't be devoted to her. However, Shui Rui always exceeded her expectations. It made her look like a fool who worried about nothing. She had wronged him for no reason. Next, Yushu told Shui Rui everything about her plan, including how she got information from Jing Chen, aroused his suspicion, and asked him to inquire about the Book of Mystic Fairy's 6 Rens. I think the key is still in that book. There is something fishy about the calamity of Dan. Why can a person's fate shake the world's peace? If we understand the meaning behind it, there might be a solution. Yushu said. The Book of Mystery Woman's 6 Rens, huh? Shui Rui muttered to himself as he linked the few things he knew together. He didn't want to let go of even the slightest clue. He seemed to be lost in thought for a while before a bright light suddenly flashed in his eyes. I think we can also investigate the matter of Princess Royal and Yun Hua's son dying for love. Yushu looked at him in confusion. Do you remember when Ji Xingxuan was in prison, you told me that you met a storyteller? When Shui Rui mentioned it, Yushu remembered that she heard a storyteller in a tea house on North Street last month. He told a story about Yun Hua's son and Princess Liue meeting. She still remembered clearly that the storyteller talked about a little-known matter. Before Princess Liue, Yun Mufeng had a wife. This inevitably made people think that Yun Hua's son was a Qin Shimi who abandoned his wife and chose riches and honor. It was a great slander. The people of Yun Hua had been dead for so many years, but now there was someone who brought up this old matter. Whether it was true or false, it was suspicious. Shui Rui said, I sent someone to the tea house at the end of the street to ask. The shopkeeper said that the storyteller who called himself Old Gu would occasionally come to his tea house to tell stories. But after telling the story about Yun Hua's son, I never saw him again. What do you mean? I mean, Yun Hua's death that year was strange. Yushu was stunned. Everyone in Anling City knew that Yun Hua died for Princess Royal after she died of illness. But Shui Rui said it wasn't so? Think about it, the question about the astrology in the Grand Yen examination 20 years ago is the same as this year. Among the 3,000 IQ, only Yun Hua's son can solve it. And this big trouble is his biological son. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? Jing Chen is a trouble, this can't be changed. Then the one with the problem is Yun Hua's son. The more Shui Rui analyzed, the clearer some of the ideas in his mind became. The layers of confusion in front of him aroused his curiosity. Do you think that he knew about the big trouble long ago, but for some unspeakable purpose, he came to the capital to participate in the Grand Yen examination and to get close to Princess Royal? He planned so carefully, but in the end, the matter was exposed, so he had to die for Princess Royal. Hearing Shui Rui's speculation, Yushu's eyelids suddenly twitched. There was an inexplicable strange feeling in her heart. She couldn't help but think, if Shui Rui's speculation was true, then why did Yun Hua come to the capital, and why did he abandon his wife to become the princess's son-in-law? Could he be the same as her? Was he also aiming for the Book of Fairy Maiden's 6 Rens? Shui Rui didn't know that Yushu was entrusted to destroy the Book of Mystery Fairy 6 Rens, so when he saw her eyes flickering, he only thought that she was surprised. In any case, the great calamity of calamity is definitely not as simple as what Jingchen told you. We'll split up. You continue to get more information from him. I'll go investigate what happened 20 years ago and see if I can find anything. Yushu nodded but still said worriedly, then you must inquire carefully. This is a serious matter and there are many spies in the dark. Don't let someone with ulterior motives target you. The two of them discussed and decided on a plan. Because Yushu's current situation was delicate, and it hadn't reached the point of a life-and-death struggle, so they subconsciously didn't plan for the worst-case scenario. For example, one day in the future, they would have to go against the high and mighty imperial power. Ever since Yushu found out that she confronted Jing Chen at the observatory that night, and was troubled by her identity as the person who broke her life, she hadn't been able to sleep well for the past few days. With Shui Rui sharing some of the burden, she felt tired and in front of him, she yawned a few times. You don't have to go anywhere in the afternoon. Just sleep here. Shui Rui arranged the pillows on the couch, got up and made space for her to lie down. Yushu was indeed sleepy. She rubbed her forehead and fell down. When she saw him turn around to leave, she didn't think twice and grabbed his clothes. Big brother, stay with me for a while. Shui Rui looked down at her. I'll go get a blanket and I'll be back soon. Only then did Yushu let go of him. She covered her mouth and yawned again, and her eyes were watery. Not long after, Shui Rui came up from downstairs. Before he got close, he heard her soft snoring. He walked to the side of the couch and saw that her mouth was slightly open, and her sleeping posture was not elegant. He couldn't help but smile, bent down to take off her shoes, and shook out the thin blanket to cover her stomach. Then he quietly sat on the side of the couch, clasped his fingers, and turned his head to focus on her sleeping face. His eyes were calm and contemplative. Chapter 502. After Yushu fell asleep, Shui Rui left quietly. He boarded a sedan in the back street and returned to the Shui mansion. Hadaku, who was chatting with a few servants at the second gate, saw them enter the courtyard. He hurriedly threw the half a handful of melon seeds in his hand back onto the plate, dusted his hands and trotted forward. He took out the big fan at the back of his waist and fanned Shui Rui as he said with a shy face, "Young master, why did you come back in the middle of the afternoon? It's so sunny outside." Shui Rui glanced at him. He didn't mind that he had come out to play instead of staying in the inner courtyard. Is grandfather back? As the personal servant of Shui Rui, Hadaku was very popular among the servants of the Shui residence. He loved to run around, so he knew all the big and small things that happened in the minister's residence even without going out. Hadaku even knew Xuelingnan's whereabouts. Grand Scholar Song invited me to the Glazed Wind restaurant to drink tea. He's not in the manor right now. Shui Rui nodded and casually asked, "Did Dr. Zhou come to my mother's place today?" Xuelingnan had always discouraged Shui Rui from going to the west courtyard, so while Madame Shui had been ill, he hadn't even gone to the rear courtyard to see her. Madame seems to be better these 2 days. I don't see Dr. Zhou visiting to check on her. Baoda carefully looked at Shui Rui's expression. When he saw that there was no one around, he moved closer to Shui Rui and said in a fawning tone, "Master isn't in the mansion. Young master, why don't you go see Madame? I'll keep watch for you." Meddlesome. Shui Rui patted the back of his head. His eyes were calm as if he was unmoved. He went straight through the east corridor and returned to his residence. An hour later, Shui Rui was standing outside the small courtyard next to the west courtyard's ancestral hall. He was wearing the pine green gown he had just changed into. His hair was neatly wrapped in a square scarf, revealing his handsome facial features. His refined appearance made the maid guarding the courtyard blush. When she came back to her senses, he had already entered the courtyard. Madame Shui had lived by the side of the ancestral hall for 10 some years. The wutong tree in the courtyard had grown from a sapling to a height that surpassed the walls. Shui Rui still remembered that whenever he had the chance to visit his mother when he was a child, Madame Shui would bring him to the courtyard to water this tree, coaxing him that once the tree grew up, he would be able to see her every day. Now the tree had grown to the point where he had to look up at it. But his mother's promise had been broken 3 years ago. He destroyed it with his own hands. Young master. The maid, who was dozing off in the hall, was startled awake when she heard the sound of the curtain moving. She raised her head and saw that the person who came was Shui Rui. She exclaimed in surprise. Is mother awake? Young master, please wait a moment. The maid hurriedly tugged on her skirt and stood up, then quietly entered the inner room. Shui Rui stood at the door, vaguely hearing voices from within. In a few moments, the maid retreated and pursed her lips into a smile. Young master, come in. Madam is awake. Saying so, she walked to the door. This servant will stand guard outside. Shui Rui nodded and entered the room. The room was not large. There was a bed, a couch, a dressing table, and a cabinet. It was so simple that it did not seem at all like the living quarters of the stately madam of the first branch of the Shui estate. Madame Shui was sitting up on the couch, a thin blanket covering her knees. Her eyes were slightly open, unfocused as they gazed in the direction of the door. A faint smile hung on her sickly face as she slowly extended her hand. Rui. Shui Rui's steps paused. His gaze swept over her face and he inwardly sighed in relief. He then quickly walked to her side, tightly grasped her hand and sat down next to her. A bright smile rose on his face, not caring that Madame Shui couldn't see it. Mother, your son has been busy with official business these past few days and was unable to visit mother. I've missed mother. It's not a problem. It's good that you were able to come. Madame Shui patted the back of his hand, then pinched his arm. Her brow slightly creased. She said, You've gotten thinner again. You've worked hard, but you still have to obediently eat your meals. Don't think that just because I can't see you I don't know. Shui Rui made a sound of assent, but he did not say that the last time he came to visit her, the weather had been cold and he had been wearing thick clothes. Now that the weather was hot and he had taken off his clothes, he naturally felt thinner. Madame Shui was just like any other mother. She pulled him over and chattered for a while, mostly about Father Shui. At the time, your father was the prefectural magistrate of Yang. He was also busy from day to night as if there was no end to his work. In the first year he lost a great deal of weight, but he was quite spirited. When he returned to the capital he found it hard to sleep. Every day he would go to the morning court at the 5 o'clock hour and wake up at the 4 o'clock hour. Shui Rui casually interrupted. Father returned to the capital when I was 2 years old. Mother, did you hear about the matter of Yun Hua changing his son and Princess Liue? Madame Shui tilted her head, closed her eyes and thought back. I did hear about it, but by the time we returned to the capital, those two had already passed away, so I had no chance to meet them. That year Shui Rui's father Shui Zhao was still alive. The two of them were loving and harmonious, and Madame Shui's health had not yet collapsed. Old Minister Shui did not confine her to the West Court like he did now. Counting the years, Shui Rui knew that his parents had never met Yun Hua, but he did not feel disappointed. Instead he asked, Then mother, have you ever heard that this Yun Hua Yi's son had a first wife in his hometown? Madame Shui did not seem to remember matters from 10-odd years ago. She frowned and thought for a long time, then forcefully grabbed Shui Rui's hand and said, Yes, when I was young I faintly heard a few rumors. They said that this EZ had once publicly defied His Majesty's decree and refused to become the Emperor's son-in-law. It was said that he already had a wife. Shui Rui's spirits rose. He thought to himself that his mother's memory was very good when she was sober, so there was no way she would be mistaken. In that case, the story told by the storyteller in the tea house was most likely true. Then what happened later? Why did he marry a princess? Who knows? Perhaps he coveted royal power and riches, or perhaps he had a change of heart. Isn't there a saying in the books, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman? Madame Shui smiled coldly. One could vaguely make out the elegance of her youth on her pale face, but she was blind, so she could not see just what sort of grace those eyes had held 10 years ago. Seeing the sadness on her face, Shui Rui did not dare to ask any more questions, afraid that he would bring up her sad past and cause her to fall into hysteria again. As a result, he changed the topic. Mother, your son has someone he admires. Madame Shui froze, then joy and curiosity appeared on her face. Pushing his hand, she urged, When did this happen? Which family's young lady? Did she tell your grandfather to send someone to propose marriage? After living in seclusion for 10-some years, Madame Shui had long since lost the authority and self-awareness of a mother. She didn't even dare to think that she could make the decision on her son's marriage. Shui Rui's eyes flashed as he lightly laughed. She's from Yang, not a female teacher of disguise from a noble clan. Last year she took the Dian exam and is a famous female fortune-teller. She's intelligent and knows how to handle matters. She also has a younger brother at home, and she's the type of person who cares about the old and cherishes the young. I still haven't mentioned it to my grandfather, so I'll talk to mother first. Hearing this, Madame Shui's face alternated between smiling and worried. As a girl, it's best for her to be educated and reasonable. I don't have any ideas. If you find her suitable, tell your grandfather as soon as possible so that you don't miss out on a good marriage. And your son is attentive. Madame Shui patted the back of his hand and sighed. Your father and I were husband and wife for several years, but in the end, we only have one child. Your father is gone, but even if I have one breath left, I still want to see you start a family and hold a grandson. Only then can I close my eyes in peace. Hearing these words, Shui Rui's complexion darkened. He tightly pursed his lips and carefully grasped Madame Shui's ice-cold hand. Pressing it against his forehead, he softly said, "It's your son who is unfilial." Madame Shui seemed not to hear his words. Blinking her empty eyes, she continued to warmly smile at him. As Shui Rui gazed at her, he felt his heart ache. 3 years ago she had gone crazy. When she awoke, she no longer remembered Jin Sun. All she knew was that he was her son, so she could not see Jin Sun, or else her illness would relapse. He could still come here a few times a year, but Jin Sun had not been able to see his birth mother since 3 years ago. This was a sin he had committed, but he didn't know whether or not he would be able to repay it while they were still alive. By the time Yushu woke up, it was already dusk. She lay alone in the cool and ventilated courtyard. Opening her eyes several times, she still felt that it was somewhat unreal. She had actually told Shui Rui everything in one breath. Rubbing her swollen head, she sat up cross-legged and slowly recalled the details. Suddenly she giggled. I've been vexed for several days for nothing. It's much easier to say it out loud. She stretched and stepped on her shoes. Just as she got off the bed, Xiao Qing and Xiao Dai, who had been guarding outside, heard the noise and entered. "Miss, you've woken up. Drink some tea and wash your face." Yushu felt refreshed. Returning to her room on the second floor, she changed out of her wrinkled clothes and asked, "Did my eldest brother say that he would be back tonight?" Xiao Qing squatted in front of her and smoothed out her belt, answering, "Young master said that he wouldn't be coming tonight. He told Miss to eat first before leaving." Yushu was not a clingy person. Hearing these words, she was only disappointed for a moment before continuing to do what she had to do. After dinner, Yushu returned home and asked the concierge. Knowing that He Fangji had come back early today, she remembered what she had promised Yu Xiaoxiu the day before, so she didn't even go back to the house and went straight to Zhao Hui's courtyard. Yifangji and Zhao Hui were playing with their son in the room. Yushu came in and sat down. She hugged He Xiaochuan and mentioned that she wanted Yu Xiaoxiu to recognize them as his godparents. The first to nod was He Fangji. "I was going to mention this to you even if you didn't say it. You two siblings, one calls me father and the other calls me uncle. Not to mention that it's hard to say, you've drifted apart for no reason. Parents were biased. If Zhao Hui doted on Yushu more, then He Fangji undoubtedly liked to bring Yu Xiaoxiu more." Zhao Hui hesitated and said, "It's a good thing, but have you asked your mother about this?" "Of course I've asked before I came to tell my parents. Xiaoxiu is also happy to be your godson. My mother is not a good person. In the future when Xiaoxiu grows up, there will be no elders to teach him. Even marriage will be difficult. My mother understands this." Chapter 503. The rain didn't stop until it was dark. After dinner, Yu Xiaoxiu squatted in the yard to wash the dishes. Yushu washed her hair, tied her hair behind her ear, and left the house with it draped over her shoulders. Facing the alley, Qing Zheng was lying leisurely on a rattan chair. His 2 calves were crossed over the edge of the chair, showing the clean soles. He heard the sound of the door being pushed open, but his eyes were still on the sky. He just raised his hand and waved, "Disciple, come here." "Master." Yushu closed the door, walked to his side, squatted down and looked up at the sky. The clean night sky was black and shiny, and the star map was unfolded. This was the most suitable night to watch the stars. "What do you see?" After a while, Qing Zheng asked. "Well, there is a closed star in the East Kong constellation. There may be a noble in the royal family who is sick. There is a bright star in the West Ginseng constellation, which corresponds to the northwest. In summer there is a drought in the northwest this year. There is a shining star in the South Ghost constellation. The big star is shining and it is facing the Neodymium Palace. There is a woman who is wronged. Well, there is a mother and child star in the sky and there is a woman who is about to give birth. Yushu listed everything she could understand. After listening, Qing Zheng stroked his beard with satisfaction and said, "Not bad. Master taught me well." Yushu took the opportunity to flatter him. Although her stingy master had a bad temper, his teaching ability was first class. Because he never talked nonsense when he taught, and she was not a person who liked to be distracted, what she remembered were all useful things. "Have you memorized the Luyao formula I taught you?" "I have memorized it. Do you want me to recite it for you?" This was what Qing Zheng checked most frequently in recent days. Yushu could recite it as soon as she opened her mouth. "No need." Qing Zheng waved his left hand and rubbed the tip of his beard with his right hand. "How many books have you memorized? The things you ask me every day." "There are 4 books and I am memorizing the 5th one." Speaking of this, Yushu was proud. In order to memorize more things during the day, she would ask Qing Zheng for a bunch of miscellaneous things before she left at night. She would go back and sort them out before reading them. There were already 5 books bound with hemp paper and thick thread. Don't just write it down on paper. You have to remember it in your head. You can only look at the things on paper but you can't use them. Only the things in your head are alive." "I understand." Yushu stood up and patted her butt. "Master, please sit down. I'll go grab the chess pieces." "You don't have to catch them today," said Qing Zheng. "You don't have to catch them in the future." When Yushu heard this, she turned her head and looked suspiciously at the old man on the rattan chair. She said, "Master, do you mean that I've mastered the 6 lines? So fast?" She had been preparing for the 6 lines breaking spell for 2 months, but she had only learned it for 5 or 6 days. "What? Do you think it'll take you 8 to 10 years to master it? Once you've passed the threshold and memorized the incantation, all that's left is the maturity. In the future, if you have nothing better to do, practice more." Qing Zheng turned around and looked at his disciple, who was barely satisfactory. "And your handwriting, it's really ugly. You need to practice more, or you won't be able to help others with their divination in the future. And your temper, don't always do whatever you want. You will only learn when you suffer losses. And your dressing, don't always dress like a brat. You are obviously a pretty little girl. If you have money, buy a few more jewelry and clothes. Don't spend it all on food." Qing Zheng was long-winded, saying, and one after another. The more Yushu listened, the more she felt that something was wrong. She couldn't help but interrupt him. "Master, are you sick? Why do I feel like you are making arrangements for your funeral?" Qing Zheng's face darkened. He straightened his back and stretched out his hand to point at her nose. He scolded, "And your mouth? Don't try to anger me to death as soon as you open your mouth. I can still live for 80 years. If he lived for 80 years he would become a tortoise." Yushu didn't say this out loud. She moved her feet to the side and avoided the hand pointing at her nose. She smiled and said, "Master, don't be angry. I was wrong. Can't you live to 100 years old? By the way, I don't want to play chess today. What should I do now? Should I look at the stars first or do the divination first?" Qing Zheng lay back angrily. "No need. There is wine in the room. You go in and get it." Yushu entered the room and lit the lamp. Sure enough, she saw a jar of wine on the table and 2 empty bowls. She took the wine jar and a bowl and put it on the stone table in the yard next to Qing Zheng. She poured half a bowl and handed it to Qing Zheng. "Master, there is another bowl. Go and get it too. You can drink with me." "I also want a drink?" Yushu twisted her fingers and said embarrassedly, "It's not good for a girl to drink. I'm still young." Seeing that Qing Zheng was about to explode again, Yushu quickly turned around and ran back into the room. She took out the bowl that was left behind and poured half a bowl for herself. She didn't know how strong the ancient wine was. She wasn't afraid of getting drunk, but she was afraid that if she drank too much, she would smell like alcohol and it would be hard to explain when she got back. Qing Zheng was not satisfied with the small sip she poured, so he grabbed the jar and filled it for her. "Master." Qing Zheng held the bowl without drinking. He took a deep breath and stared at Yushu. "Do you remember when I accepted you as my disciple that day, I asked you to help me find something?" Yushu's heart skipped a beat. She thought that the key point had finally come. She said seriously, "I remember that you said you wanted me to help you find something, but you didn't say what it was." Qing Zheng's eyes suddenly became sharp. He didn't have his usual laziness. Jingdu, Celestial Commissioner, Book of Mystery Fairy Lu Ren. Yushu's eyebrows twitched. She whispered, Book of Mystery Fairy Lu Ren? What is that? Qing said, the Book of Changes has been passed down to this day and formed many schools. The first three are Qimen Duanjia Tai Divine Number, and the long-lost Divine Lesson of Lu Ren. Among these three, Lu Ren is the leader. The first two are especially popular and there are many miscellaneous studies. As for Lu Ren, it was collected by the Da'an royal family 100 years ago because it revealed too much of the mysteries of heaven. This Book of Mystery Fairy Lu Ren is the only scroll that recorded the true teachings of Lu Ren. It is now in the hands of the Celestial Commissioner. It has always been in the hands of every great teacher. The thing that you want is in the hands of the Celestial Commissioner's great teacher? Yushu couldn't help but stutter. She secretly cursed. The great teacher of the Celestial Commissioner was known as the leader of the hundreds of exchanges in the world. The high and mighty boss of the Celestial Commissioner. The Book of Mystery Fairy Lu Ren sounded like a treasure that was not shown to outsiders. How was she going to get it? Did she have to find him and ask if he was willing to let her read it for a few days? She would probably be stripped naked and hung at the city gate. Well, Qing closed his eyes. Many years ago, I swore that I would never step into the capital in my life. Since you are my disciple, you should go on my behalf. Naturally, she could not go back on the promise she made when she became his disciple. During this period of time, she had indeed learned a lot from Taoist Qing. Remembering their relationship as master and disciple, she calmed herself down and cast aside all distracting thoughts. She seriously considered the feasibility of this matter. It was not that she had no way at all. Then I will go to the capital, Yushu said. But it seems that it will take a lot of time to find this book. Master, you are not in a hurry, are you? Qing's eyes were bright. You just need to find it in your lifetime and then destroy it. Destroy? Yushu was dumbfounded. It was so difficult to get the treasure in his hands, and he wanted her to destroy it after she found it. Yes, and you have to swear to me that you will not learn the things in the book. Qing's voice became cold. He stared at Yushu as if he would eat her if she did not swear. Yushu took a deep breath and swore gloomily, Okay, I swear to the three pure ones that if I can find the Book of Fairy Maiden in my lifetime, I will never learn the skills in the book. If I go against this, let me, Qing interrupted her coldly. I will let you be a mangy dog in your next life. You will wander the streets without enough food and suffer from the supercilious looks of others. Now Yushu rolled her eyes at him. Although she was not happy that the old man cursed her with the mangy dog, she still said obediently, If I go against this, let me be a mangy dog in my next life. I will wander the streets without enough food and suffer from the supercilious looks of others. Okay. Qing nodded with satisfaction. His gloomy face finally showed a smile. He picked up the bowl and said to her, Come on, drink this bowl of wine with me. After that, he took the initiative to touch her with the bowl. Yushu hurriedly lowered her body, but some wine still spilled out. My dear disciple, I wish you good luck. I wish you good fortune, master. Neither the master nor the disciple would say anything pretentious. After 2 words of blessing, Qing raised his head and drank up. Yushu lowered her head and took a sip. She felt it was not spicy, so she licked her lips disappointedly. Then she raised her head and drank it down. Ah, good wine. Qing drank happily. Yushu curled her lips. What's so good about it? It doesn't taste good at all. Qing took out a cushion from under his body and threw it at his feet. Sit down. Today is a happy day. Master wants to talk to you. Yushu sat down on the ground next to the rattan chair. She rested her arm on the edge of the chair and rested her chin on one hand. She was ready to listen to Qing's long-winded talk. So far, I have only accepted 2 disciples. The last one was 30 years ago. Oh, in terms of seniority, you should call him senior brother. But in terms of aptitude, you are not even a hair on his head. Your senior brother is also filial. After marrying a wife and having children, he still listens to me. Her ears were full of senior brother this and senior brother that. As Yushu listened, her head became a little dizzy. Her stomach began to heat up. Her eyelids gradually became heavy and drooped uncontrollably. Qing suddenly stopped talking. He looked down at the little disciple lying on his knees. His eyes softened. Finally, he sighed softly and said in a low voice, My dear disciple, go to the Kong family's barter shop on my behalf tomorrow and buy 2 red ropes. Yushu answered vaguely. She did not know if she would still remember this sentence when she woke up tomorrow. Qing Zheng raised his hand and hesitantly placed it on top of her head. He touched her soft hair and gently rubbed it. He raised his head and looked at the flickering stars in the sky. In his eyes, which had experienced the vicissitudes of life, was an open-minded understanding of the world. Chapter 504. Yunhua Ez, who was famous in the capital 20 years ago, was Yushu's senior fellow apprentice. This knowledge was so shocking that it took Shui Rui a while to accept it. Yushu was not as calm as him. They were silent for a while and Shui Rui asked first, "How can you be sure that it is him? Your master has never mentioned your senior fellow apprentice's name. Did you make a mistake?" Yushu asked, "Do you know why I left my hometown and took Xiaoxiu from Jiangnan to the capital? To get rid of the Ji family and to stand out? At that time the Ji family was very powerful in Yiyang. In order to redress Zhao Hui's grievances, Yushu went to court and exposed that the Ji family used fake life slips in the Dai exchange house to murder others. Therefore she completely offended the Ji family. As an insider, Shui Rui knew that Yushu left Yiyang City after that and came to Anling to seek a way out. Not necessarily. Another reason why I came to the capital was that I was entrusted by my master. I suspect that Yunhua also came to the capital for the imperial examination because of this entrustment." He deliberately approached Princess Luyue. Shui Rui's expression turned serious, and he sat up straight before he asked, "What's the request?" Ever since Yushu came to this dynasty, there were two things that she had hidden the most, and they were things that she planned to let rot in her stomach. The first was that she had reincarnated in another person's body, and the second was Dawish Qing Zheng's request that day. She once swore in front of Qing Zheng that she would help him find the book of fantasy goddesses and destroy it in her lifetime, and she would not learn the skills in that book. Qing Zheng had told her that the book was in the hands of the Great Advisor. She only knew who the Great Advisor of the Celestial Commissioner was after she stayed in Anling City. He was one of the most important ministers under the Emperor's command. He was a big shot that she couldn't even reach. If she wanted to obtain the Mystic Maiden Six Ren's book from his hands, without absolute certainty, Yushu did not dare to act rashly. Now that she understood the secrets of Yunhua Yi's son in the past, Yushu felt as if she could see how she would walk down his old path. She could not help but be vigilant, and she became even more determined in her thoughts. He couldn't let anyone know about Qing Zheng's request. Even Shui Rui couldn't do it because she couldn't trust him completely unless, "Big brother, I will only tell you this secret if you swear not to reveal it to a third person." Being stared at by Yushu without blinking, Shui Rui's mood was a little strange. He could feel the distrust that she was revealing at this moment. Normally he should feel unhappy, but in fact he felt a little happy. Because she was planning to share her secret with him, and he was the first person she had ever told about it. Even though she said that she didn't trust him, it was clear that she trusted him. The girl that he loved most of the time was so cunning that it made people's teeth itch, but sometimes she was simple and straightforward, making people love her. "I, Shui Qingbi, swear here today with my life as a guarantee, if I mention the secret of Yushu to anyone else, I will die a horrible death, and become a dog in the 6 realms of reincarnation." It was a true oath. After he finished speaking, he looked at Yushu's tense face and suddenly smiled. He reached out his hand and gently pinched her cheek, saying, "Can you say it now?" Yushu looked at him deeply and slowly said, "Master wants me to find the Mystic Maiden Six Ren's book, and destroy it." Shui Rui was shocked, speechless for a moment. He didn't know much about the Mystic Maiden Six Ren's book, but he also heard from Yushu that it was from this book that the Great and Calamity was mentioned. One could imagine how many secrets related to national affairs were hidden in this book, and it could easily take people's lives. Yushu wanted to destroy this book. Just this act alone was tantamount to a traitor. Now Shui Rui knew why Yushu solemnly asked him to swear. If he dared to reveal such a purpose, he would be dead. So I think that Yunhua was also commissioned to destroy the Mystic Maiden Six Ren's book, like me, but he was seen through in the end, so he died here. In addition to his age, and you told me that he already had a wife in his hometown, all these circumstances made me think that he was the big brother that my master mentioned. Yushu told Shui Rui everything about her conjecture, and she wasn't vigilant at all. "It's very possible," Shui Rui said hesitantly. "But based on these few things I can't be very sure that it's him. Did your master mention any other characteristics of your senior brother?" Yushu shook her head. "No, my master never told me much about him. He only revealed a few words after drinking and I remembered it." Although there was no conclusive evidence, Yu Shu's intuition told her that Yun Hua was Qin Zheng's big disciple. It couldn't be wrong. If he is really your senior brother, why don't you use your strange skill of predicting the fate of people to trace back and see if he died because of the Mystic Maiden's 6 Ren's book? Shui Rui suggested. Yu Shu frowned and said, Big brother, you don't know. My rule of the time of calamity can indeed predict the cause of death, but there are 3 conditions that cannot be omitted. First, I must know the person's birthday. Second, I must know the time of death. Third, there must be a similar disaster as a primer. The first 2 conditions are easy to satisfy, but the last one is difficult. If he really died because of that book, it would be unprecedented. I can't predict it. Shui Rui sighed regretfully. He felt that it was normal that Yu Shu couldn't predict it. If she could really know all the deaths in the world, she would be a living Yama king. Then what do you plan to do? Do you really want to follow your master's instructions and destroy that book? Shui Rui asked tentatively. There was a little confusion and hesitation on Yu Shu's face, but it soon disappeared. She said calmly, It's still too early to say anything. It's not too late to make a decision after I figure out what is hidden in the Mystic Maiden's 6 Ren's book. She did promise Qin Zheng to help him destroy that book, but before everything else she had to live according to her own wishes. Shui Rui didn't say anything. He just looked at her resolute expression with an inexplicable look in his eyes. After the meal, Yu Shu took the 10th princess's horoscope and went upstairs alone. Shui Rui didn't go up to disturb her. He set up an incense table downstairs, boiled water and brewed tea, and waited quietly for the result. Upstairs, Yu Shu washed her hands and burned the incense. In order to be accurate, she used the dragon's saliva and even changed it into a soothing white crystal bracelet. Only Xiao Qing, a maid, was left in the room. She listed the deceased's birthday on the paper and compared it to the time of death. She traced it back to 3 years ago, the 11th year of Zhaoqing, the year of the Gingxian. The 10th princess's accident happened on the 13th day of the 1st month and she died in the early morning of the 14th. An hour later, Yu Shu had finished calculating the disaster that had occurred during those 2 days. She put down her brush and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. She opened the Book of Life and Death, in disbelief, and searched it. After several similar cases, she finally confirmed that it was the truth. She was so surprised that she couldn't close her mouth. The 10th princess actually died like this? She still couldn't believe it, so she simply laid out the paper again and calculated the days before the 10th princess's death day by day, in order to find the truth. In the blink of an eye, it was evening. It wasn't until Xiao Qing added a lamp under the window and the fragrance in the room was so strong that people couldn't open their eyes, that Yu Shu looked up from the table with red eyes. There was a thick stack of toilet paper in her hand, and the ink was drying. Her face was indescribably conflicted. She had thought about the 10th princess's death in the past few days, but she never expected it to end like this. How could she talk to Shui Rui? When Shui Rui found out that the truth that caused him to carry the guilt for 3 years was actually like this, how would he face it? Yu Shu sat quietly for a long time, looking at the densely packed numbers and symbols on the paper. She felt an indescribable anger towards the 10th princess, who had died before she even met her. Whoosh! Yu Shu grabbed a stack of paper on the table, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it into the empty basin beside her feet. She only grabbed the last piece in her hand and said coldly to Xiao Qing, "Take it to the back and burn it." Shui Rui had boiled a few pots of spring water in the afternoon. Seeing that the sky was dark and Yu Shu hadn't come down yet, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. He was about to go upstairs to take a look when he saw the door in front of him open and Yu Shu walked in. Shui Rui immediately stood up, and there was a trace of urgency in his voice that he didn't notice. "How is it? Have you calculated it?" "I've calculated it." Yu Shu's expression was indifferent. She walked over and sat down on the chair opposite him. She picked up the Yixing clay teapot on the tea table and drank a few mouthfuls of warm water without using a cup. Seeing this, Shui Rui also sat back down and stared at her with his black eyes. Although he didn't urge her to speak, his expression clearly showed that he was anxious to know the answer. Yu Shu drank the tea and felt a bitterness in her mouth. She poured half the pot of tea into her mouth in one go and put down the teapot with a bang. The 10th princess wasn't pushed down by anyone. She jumped down from the Seaview Tower by herself. Shui Rui blinked a few times as if he didn't understand. Yu Shu felt uncomfortable seeing this, so she had to steel her heart and explain clearly, the 10th princess was courting death. She jumped down from the building and fell into the lake. She didn't fall to her death, but she died of a winter cold. I've calculated it 3 times and there's no mistake. It wasn't Jin Xuan who pushed her down and no one pushed her. At this point, it was impossible for Shui Rui to be unable to understand, and his handsome face gradually froze. What? She didn't know if he was asking Yu Shu or himself. Why did the 10th princess commit suicide by jumping off a building on the day of the appointed marriage, and why did she frame the innocent Shui Jinshuan? She didn't tell the truth even before she died. What? Yu Shu shouldn't have known the answer, but she had calculated another bad account and found out an embarrassing truth. Not long before the 10th princess's accident, she had a love affair. It was a man born in the year of Xinyo and he looked like a chicken. It wasn't you, big brother. Shui Rui was born in the year of Rinshu, and his name was Xiaogo. Not only that, 2 days before her accident she committed a vile act. This vile act was also a man named Xiaogo. Love affair and committing a vile act were 2 disasters that could easily lead to death. Big brother, you don't have to feel guilty. The 10th princess was not framed because of you. Otherwise, I have calculated that the fatal love affair should be on you. It can be seen that you were originally a good match for her, but she had distracting thoughts and went astray. Yu Shu didn't want to make it too embarrassing in case Shui Rui found it hard to accept the truth. But in fact, she had also pondered over the whole matter several times before she finally pieced together the truth with the highest probability of being the truth. The 10th princess should have had an affair with a man named Xiaogo for a long time and was unwilling to marry Shui Rui. However, she didn't dare to openly defy the emperor's will, so she made such a bad plan. She took Shui Rui's sister, Shui Jinshuan, to the deserted Seaview Tower alone, and then jumped down from it, creating the illusion that Shui Jinshuan was the murderer. The 10th princess probably didn't expect that she would really die. She might have thought that there was a lake downstairs, and falling down was just falling into the water. Someone would definitely save her in time. At most, she would get seriously ill, and then she could accuse Shui Jinshuan of hurting her and escape from the marriage. Who would have thought that she had overestimated her own physique? After a night of catching a cold, she actually passed away. Therefore, the bitter fruit that Shui Rui and his sister had tasted so far was that they had to bear all the blame for a woman's selfishness. Chapter 505. The room was quiet, and only the intermittent dripping sound of the tea could be heard. Shui Rui did not know how long it took for him to return to his senses. It was as if he had woken up from a long nightmare, and his back was covered with a layer of sweat. Big brother. Yu Shu couldn't help but call out to him in a low voice. She didn't know when she had sat down beside him, but she held his cold hands. Shui Rui turned his head and faced Yu Shu. He revealed a complicated smile, cold and indescribable bitterness. No one knew how he survived the days after the death of the 10th princess. Every day and night he was immersed in the torment of remorse. He felt guilty to his mother, to his 3rd sister, and he was ashamed to face his grandfather. However, the person who made him feel the most guilty was the unparalleled beauty that he insisted on marrying. He had always thought that the most innocent victim in the whole matter was the 10th princess. For 3 years he had never forgotten to find the murderer who killed her and avenge her. However, regarding this murderer, he had suspected the imperial concubines in the palace, suspected Lu Hao, and even suspected that Jin Sun had made a mistake. However, he had never thought that it would be a trap that she had set up herself. It was ridiculous that the person he had been hating and regretting all these years was the same person. Yu Shu looked at Shui Rui's expression and felt upset. She wanted to comfort him, but she couldn't help but say coldly, "The 10th princess really had no intention of marrying you. Even if she leaked some information to you, I believe that you wouldn't force her." At that time, the marriage had not been arranged and everything could be salvaged. However, she chose such a method of harming the enemy and herself, harming others and herself. How old was Jin Sun at that time? She was still a child, yet she could bear to frame her. I really don't know whether to say that she was ruthless or stupid. Why are you sad for such a person? Hearing this, Shui Rui smiled bitterly, sighed softly and said in a low voice, "Everything happened because of me. She is just a pitiful person." Yu Shu hated a person from head to toe. When she heard that Shui Rui wanted to take the blame and absolve the 10th princess, she couldn't help but be angry. This made her even more determined to uproot the thorn that was the 10th princess from Shui Rui's heart. Thus, she pushed his hand away and said confidently, "What's there to be pitiful about? She's a dignified princess. She's lived a life of luxury, but she doesn't know how to be a princess. She secretly has an affair with a man. If she really has guts, why doesn't she openly mention it to the emperor and empress and ask them to be the matchmaker? I don't believe that anyone will force her to die. There must be something shameful about that Xiaoji man, so he wants her to hide her head and show her tail. It's lucky that you're here. If she's given to someone else, she'll still plot against you. Instead of feeling pity for her, it's better to pity yourself. The more Yu Shu spoke, the angrier she became. She knew that it was meaningless to argue with a dead person, but when she thought that Shui Rui was thinking about such a poisonous and stupid thing, she couldn't help but feel angry. Let me ask you the truth. If you knew that the 10th princess had someone else in her heart and was not willing to marry you, would you still stubbornly ask the emperor to arrange the marriage and force her? Shui Rui was stunned when Yu Shu bellowed at him, and the coldness in his entire body actually disappeared in the blink of an eye. As he looked at her face that was slightly flushed from anger, he was suddenly enlightened in his heart, and he suddenly wanted to laugh. When he was young, he didn't know the world. He once thought that a beauty with unparalleled talent was the best person in the world. Now, his eyes were like a torch and he could see clearly that a beauty was not famous for her talent, but someone who understood her heart. It was hard to find one in 10,000. I won't, Shui Rui shook his head and answered with certainty. At the same time he took Yu Shu's hand back and held it in his palm. His eyes warmly looked at her, his gaze fixed. You know this the best. When he liked Yu Shu, she was in love with someone else. He could use his heart to find her, he could wait for her to change her mind, but he would not force her to do something she was not willing to do. Yu Shu couldn't stand his gentle gaze. Thinking back to the twists and turns they went through to get together, the fire in her heart disappeared. She gave a light snort and pulled his hand that had warmed up. She lowered her head and bit down on his hand, not holding back. The teeth on his hand were sharp. Shui Rui had a smile on his lips, his brows not furrowed. His eyes were no longer dim and had brightened. Yu Shu let go and looked at the red mark on his hand with satisfaction. She raised her eyebrows and said to him, Don't think about the past. Don't think about the past. I don't like you thinking about someone else. From now on, if you dare to think about her again, I'll bite you once. Since the 10th princess had caused her own death, then there was no need for Shui Rui to seek revenge from that so-called murderer, and this knot in his heart would be easily resolved. Hearing her autocratic request, Shui Rui's eyes sparkled. He held her hand in front of him, kissed her round fingertips and said, She and I finally don't owe each other anything. There's no need to seek revenge for her. Don't worry, even if I think about her again, I won't feel sorry for her. Now I only have you in my heart, but Yu Shu was still proud of the first half of his words. Suddenly he changed the topic and she curled her lips. But what? I still think that even if the 10th princess was courting death, there must be someone behind the scenes who added fuel to the fire. I must find out who the man named Xiaoji is. Even if I don't seek revenge for the 10th princess, I also want to seek peace of mind for myself. A cold light flashed across Shui Rui's eyes. He had a good temper, but he was not a person to be trifled with. After 3 years, when he returned to the territory of Anling City, he did not only rely on his family background. No one in the capital city knew what he had experienced in the past 3 years. Seeing that his face was flushed again and he was no longer concerned about the death of the 10th princess, Yu Shu was relieved and said indifferently, If you want to find out, then go ahead. I also want to see what kind of peerless man can charm the 10th princess so much. He is even worse than you. Shui Rui pursed his lips and smiled. He was not angry when he heard her teasing. He was just a young and frivolous delusion towards the 10th princess. There was no mutual love between them. Those obsessions had been awakened as early as when she died, so he could pick them up and let them go. As the saying goes, 3 heads are better than zhuge liang. Yu Shu and Shui Rui, the two smart people, got together and learned from each other's strengths. In just a few days, Yu Shu first discovered the secret of Yun Huai Zi, and then untied the knot in Shui Rui's heart for 3 years. After they confided in each other, the two of them felt that they were even closer than before. Especially Yu Shu, she'd even told Shui Rui about Qing Zheng's request, and unknowingly she'd become slightly more reliant on him. In this way she was even more unwilling to resign herself to fate and be the person who broke her life. Speaking of which, ever since she had asked Jing Chen about the Book of Mystery Women's 6 Rens, she had returned to the Taisher library for the past 2 days and did not look for him again. She was only waiting for him to take the initiative to look for her when he had news. The day at the end of May was a good day to worship. He Fangji asked the servants to clean the front and back courtyards early in the morning. She set up an incense table in the courtyard, served pork head, mutton, and 4 fruit plates. Today they were going to formally adopt Yu Xiaoxiu as their son. In addition to Pei Jing and his wife, They also invited two of He Fangji's good friends in the capital city to be guests. When the auspicious hour arrived, Yu Xiaoxiu knelt to the sky and kowtowed 3 times to acknowledge his parents and old Madame He as his grandmother. At the same time he also had Pei Jing and Madame Qin as his uncles. Yu Shu accompanied Yu Xiaoxiu by holding the tea tray. After he toasted the elders and finished the ceremony, she shouted towards the door of the courtyard, "Put the 1,000-year red wine on, it must be loud." She pushed Yu Xiaoxiu's shoulder and returned to He Fangji and Zhao Hui. She held a cup of tea in each hand, knelt down, raised it above her head and said, "Xiaoxiu and I were born alone. Our father died early and our mother remarried. We depended on each other until now. There were times when we didn't have enough food and clothing, and also times when we lived under someone else's roof. My brother was more sensible than me since he was young. At a young age he had to wash and clean. He couldn't even wear new clothes all year round. He was used to living a hard life and didn't get much love from the elders. Fortunately, the heavens had eyes and he met godparents. Finally, there were a few people in this world who loved him. As the eldest sister, I didn't take good care of my brother in the past and let him suffer. It's my fault. Father and mother, please teach Xiaoxiu well in the future. If he doesn't listen, you can beat or scold him. But please love him more than you love me. My brother and I will definitely be filial." These heartfelt words made Zhao Hui's eyes brim with tears. He Fangji's eyes also reddened as she recalled the scene when she first met these two children. The spectators on both sides of the hall were all moved. Yu Xiaoxiu knelt beside Yu Shu, biting his lip. With one hand he tugged at the corner of Yu Shu's clothes. His stubborn little face was covered in tears. "Good child, get up quickly. Why are you telling the child to kneel?" Old Madame He wiped her tears and urged her son and daughter-in-law to pull him up. The scene was chaotic. The women were all wiping their tears. Zhao Hui hugged Yu Xiaoxiu with one hand and Yu Shu with the other. Qin Shi hugged He Xiaochuan and also choked with sobs. An hour later the banquet was set up. He Fangji was in the dining room entertaining the guests. Yu Shu brought Yu Xiaoxiu back to the room to wash up. In the room, Yu Shu took over Yun Dou's position. She wrung out a towel from the water basin and gently wiped Yu Xiaoxiu's face as she said to him, "Let's forget about it today. In the future you're not allowed to cry so casually. A man doesn't cry. And I won't cry anymore." Yu Xiaoxiu nodded obediently and raised his neck to look at Yu Shu, who was half a head taller than him. His eyes drifted a few times and suddenly he became determined. There was a glimmer of dazzling courage on his young face. He gathered his spirit and told her in a nasal voice. Chapter 506. The He family's medical skills had been passed down from generation to generation, but it had declined to its peak in He Fangji's generation. 60 years ago, there was a genius among He Fangji's ancestors. This person adapted the He family's ancestral set of acupuncture techniques into a new chapter. His medical skills were superb and he saved people's lives. It was said that when he moved 9 needles he could bring the dead back to life. Therefore people respectfully called him He 9 Needles, and he was known as a miracle-working doctor. Yu Shu only knew that He Fangji's family had a long history, but she didn't know that there was such a miracle-working doctor in the He family. She never thought that one day Yu Xiaoxiu would ask her to give up learning Yi and study medicine. After the initial shock, she quickly calmed down and sent Yun Dou to guard outside. She pulled Yu Xiaoxiu to sit at the head of the bed and asked carefully. "Then she learned a lot. Did Godfather tell you this?" "Yes." Yu Xiaoxiu nodded and looked at Yu Shu cautiously. "He also said that if I like medical skills, he would teach me his family's acupuncture techniques after I can identify hundreds of medicinal herbs. Sister, can I learn it?" Yu Shu had seen Yu Xiaoxiu go to the medical center every day after class. She thought he liked to go to He Fangji, but now it seemed that he was going for those medicinal herbs. She looked at Yu Xiaoxiu's yearning and pleading eyes and twitched the corner of her mouth. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had planned from the beginning that when she completed the law of time of calamity, she would pass it on to her brother and pave a shortcut for him to take. But now her plan was messed up. Yu Xiaoxiu didn't want to learn Yi anymore. "Sister, I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. The teachers in the academy teach easy lessons, but I'm so bored listening to them. I can't do my homework well. I don't think those blessings and misfortunes are as useful as a prescription from my godfather." Yu Xiaoxiu scratched his head. Seeing that Yu Shu wasn't angry, he felt reassured and continued, "Sister, you don't know. Godfather said that I am very talented. If I study medicine, I will definitely have a better future." Yu Shu had a headache. He Fangji was trying to steal her man right under her nose. "Sister? Alright, if you don't like to learn, I won't force you. However, I'll have to ask my godfather about the matter of learning medicine. Although Yu Shu was depressed, she did not struggle with it. She arranged a good path for Yu Xiaoxiu so that he could live freely in the future, not to let him live according to her wishes. He knew this child well. For him to confess to her now, it was definitely not a spur-of-the-moment decision. He must have thought about it for a long time. She wouldn't stop him if he wanted medical skills, but she still had to worry about him. Who asked her to only have such a precious little brother? Sister, you are so nice. Seeing that Yu Shu did not object, Yu Xiaoxiu's heart, which had been hanging in suspense, fell to the ground. He did not pay attention for a moment and blurted out, "Don't worry and ask my godfather. We have discussed it. As long as you agree, I can learn medicine from him openly from tomorrow onwards." Yu Shu's eyelids twitched. She resisted the urge to pull his ears and only scolded in her heart, "Brat, you are so bold. How dare you play tricks on me?" That afternoon, after the guests left, Yu Shu found He Fangji. They closed the door and talked in the small study. Yu Xiaoxiu waited outside the door, scratching his ears and cheeks. After an hour, when he heard that he was asked to come in, he couldn't wait to push the door open and enter. In the room, Yu Shu was expressionless while He Fangji was smiling. Looking at the situation, Yu Xiaoxiu also knew that the matter had been resolved, and he was immediately delighted. Sure enough, Yu Shu turned to look at him and said with a straight face, "Since you want to learn medicine from me, you can't give up halfway. Learning medicine is not as easy as learning E. If one day you can't bear the hardship, just tell me that you regret it. I can still teach you E. But don't think about medical skills in this life. Do you remember?" She made it clear and gave Yu Xiaoxiu a way out. On the surface, it seemed that she was telling Yu Xiaoxiu not to give up halfway, but in fact, half of the words were said for He Fangji. "You abducted my brother to be a doctor, so you have to teach him well. Otherwise, if he regrets it one day, he can still learn E from me." He Fangji could hear the hidden meaning in Yu Shu's words. He knew that he was in the wrong, so he was not angry and only smiled at the side. It was because he had taken a fancy to Yu Xiaoxiu's talent, so he had been hiding it from Yu Shu, the one who could make the decision. "Your sister is right. Since you want to learn, you have to learn well. You are my son now, so I will definitely not hide anything. I will definitely teach you with all my heart." He Fangji actually had his own selfish motives. He had a son in his late 40s and He Xiaochuan was still young. In the future, when he grew up, he and Zhao Hui would also be old. Whether or not they could inherit his legacy was a problem. He would first pass on his family's knowledge to Yu Xiaoxiu. In the future, with such an elder brother, it would only be beneficial to He Xiaochuan. Yu Xiaoxiu did not notice the thoughts of the two people in front of him at all. His eyes lit up as he promised, "Godfather and sister, don't worry. I will definitely work hard to learn well. I won't let you down." The next day, the first day of June, there were no classes in the Taisher library. Yu Shu went out in the morning and went to the fan shop in the south of the city to find Xan Lishan to look at her fan. The mahogany root fan was not finished, and Xan Lishan refused to let her see the half-finished product. Instead, he pulled Yu Shu to show off a kite he had made a while ago. "My kite is amazing. Do you see the red wheel on it? As long as I fly it high in the sky during the day, stay for a quarter of an hour, and pull it down, I can tell if there will be rain in a few days from the length of the scale on this end. How about it? Isn't it amazing?" Yu Shu looked at the strange-looking white kite in his hand that was half the height of a person. She did not know whether it was good or bad, so she said perfunctorily, "Yes, amazing." Xan Lishan winked at her and sent the kite forward. "Here, do you want it? I'll exchange it with you for the crystal beads. I'll take two." The corner of Yu Shu's mouth twitched. She rolled her eyes and said, "No." She had the law of rain. She could know the weather by moving her pen. There was no need to waste time flying his kite. What was the use of it? "Then I'll take one." "Don't say one, I don't even have one." Yu Shu spread out her hands at him and took 2 steps back to stay away from him. She did not want to damage his strange zither later. This profiteer could not guarantee that he would not blackmail her. "Stingy." Xan Lishan muttered angrily. In the blink of an eye, he put on a smiling face and negotiated with Yu Shu. "I know that your crystal beads are grown in a feng shui pool. Do you dare to put my baby in your pool and raise it for me for a while?" She kept him in suspense and said directly, "I can help you raise it, but what benefits will you give me?" Xan Lishan sneered and said, "If you help me raise that baby, it will be a great benefit. If you don't want to, forget it. Why should I beg you?" Yu Shu knew that he was playing hard to get, but she could not help but be curious. She went forward and asked, "Oh? What kind of baby is it? It's so delicate. Let me see it. Xan Lishan was probably pleased by Yu Shu's reaction. He smiled proudly and his eyes flickered. He covered his mouth with one hand and said to her in a low voice, "At the annual Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet, other than the young ladies who were yet to be betrothed and the young talents who were yet to be married, there were also many high-ranking officials and nobles in the capital who came to join in the fun and watch the excitement. The annual Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet was held. Other than the unmarried ladies and unmarried young talents, there were also many officials and nobles in the capital who came to join in the fun and watch. At the end of the street, a green palanquin, accompanied by a man and a horse, was approaching. The man on the horse was turning his head to talk to the man in the palanquin. It was not my turn to come tonight, but my mother got a favor card from Princess Yang and sent me here. If it weren't for the fact that I was still drinking with the men in the camp at this moment, I would have come. Originally, it was not my turn to come tonight, but my mother forcefully asked for a favor from Imperial Consort Xiang and sent me here. If it wasn't for the fact that I was still drinking with the men in the barracks." Feng Zhaomiao was 3 to 5 years younger than Shui Rui and had not passed the age where he liked to play around. It was not that he did not arrange for someone to accompany him in bed, but women were not as attractive to him as good wine and brothers. Shui Rui did not agree with his words and reprimanded him instead. "You are not young anymore and should be sensible. Don't always let General Furen worry for you. I heard that you fought with someone in the army 2 days ago and General Feng came to apologize for you. I see that you are alive and kicking today. Could it be that you managed to get help from old Furen so that you did not get beaten up by your father?" Feng Zhaomiao smiled embarrassedly and said guiltily, "If it wasn't that boy asking for a beating. He is just a concubine son of the second branch of the Yin family and he dared to strut around in the barracks and bully people as he pleased. He even pretended to be a big-tailed eagle in front of me. It was already a light punishment that I did not beat him until his teeth fell all over the floor. It was only a few drops of blood from his nose and he was crying for his parents." He was afraid that Shui Rui would say that he was not a concubine again if he continued to ask, so he quickly changed the topic. "Brother Rui, didn't the Lotus branch also receive the banquet invitation? Why didn't I see her? Didn't she come with you?" Feng Zhaomiao ran into Yu Shu and Shui Rui hugging each other in the restaurant that day and guessed that the relationship between them was unusual. So he was a little puzzled that he did not see Yu Shu. Shui Rui was sensitive and found out the meaning of Feng Zhaomiao's words. Thinking of Yu Shu's current situation, he said without thinking, "Tonight is the Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet. If she goes with me, won't it attract criticism?" Feng Zhaomiao was stunned and wanted to say something. But he heard a whistling sound behind him. In the blink of an eye, 2 horses leaped past him, which startled the horse under him. But he heard a hearty laughter. "Ah, 11th Prince, you have to admit defeat. The snow-treading horse under you is now mine." Then there was an exasperated voice. "Zhu Er! How dare you play tricks with me?" Shui Rui's gaze flickered when he heard this voice, and he lifted the curtain of the palanquin with one hand, causing him to see that there were 2 horses that stood in opposition under the lanterns a few meters ahead of him. The 11th Prince, Lu Yi, was flying into a rage out of humiliation as he raised his horsewhip and pointed it at the young man on the crimson-red horse before him. In an instant, everyone on the street turned around to look at him. The man on the red horse was in his 20s. He wore a green robe and had long arms and legs. His black hair was tied up and his forehead was full. He had thick eyebrows and long eyes. He sat high on the horse's back and glanced sideways. He held the reins with one arm and looked free and easy. Shui Rui recognized him at a glance. He was one of the 3 people he suspected had something to do with the 10th princess's suicide. He was the second young master of the Zhu family in the capital, Zhu Qingjue. Zhu Qingjue seemed to sense the gaze from afar. He turned around and met Shui Rui's probing eyes. 4 eyes met and 2 pairs of sword-like eyebrows were raised. Under the night lights, it was like swords clashing and sparks flew. Shui Rui gently nodded and let down the curtain. Zhu Qingjue's lips curled up and he dismounted. He threw the reins to a servant and said to Lu Yi, 11th Prince, lower your voice. I can see that you have a deficiency of qi and blood and the deficiency of your kidneys and spleen. It should be caused by indulging in sensual pleasures. If you don't want to leave behind a hidden illness, I will give you a prescription. Come and find me after the banquet today. He did not care about Lu Yi's expression and walked into the Dinghua Hall with his hands behind his back. Feng Zhaomiao saw this scene and clicked her tongue. She bent down and said to Shui Rui, Brother Rui, do you see? In the entire capital, in terms of arrogance, second young Master Zhu is probably number one. Even the 11th prince is slightly inferior. Chapter 508. Xan Lishan hid the relic of Yinhua Ez. Yushu didn't care if he was telling the truth or not, she had to see it. So, she went along with his tone and said, I'm not a talkative person. Why don't you take it out and let me see? Xan Lishan raised his eyebrows. He didn't rush to show off. Instead, he walked around the counter and closed the door of the shop. He bolted the door and returned to Yushu. He stretched his hand to the back of his neck and pulled out a thin rope from his collar. There was a touch of green on it. He took off his neck and spread it out in his palm. He handed it to Yushu for her to see. Here. Yushu moved closer to take a look. She saw a coin-sized jade ball in his hand. It was hollowed out and glowed. It didn't seem to be an ordinary item. What was even more strange was that there seemed to be something wrapped inside. It was dark. She couldn't tell what it was at first glance. What is this? She asked in confusion. You don't know, right? This treasure is called Zhuge Tong. Zhuge Tong? She couldn't deduce anything from the words. Yushu raised her head suspiciously. Then tell me what's the use of this thing? It's very useful. Do you want to know? Xan Lishan's eyes shone with excitement. Yushu nodded and cooperated with him with an expectant look. I want to know. Xan Lishan grinned. I'm not telling you. What are you staring at? How can I tell you such an important thing so easily? What if you covet my treasure? Why are you curling your lips? Am I not right? You don't know how to use it. Even if you take it, it's a pile of trash. I don't need to worry about your greed. Alas, how about this? Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. You take it back and put it in your feng shui pond. Let me raise it for 49 days. When I'm in a good mood, I'll tell you how it works. How about that? Yushu secretly despised Xan Lishan. Xan Lishan obviously had a favor to ask of her, but he was still putting on an act. She did not want to agree to it casually, but this was related to Yinhua, and she felt that this Zhuge Tong was very useful. So, after hesitating for a moment, she still nodded and agreed. All right, it's settled then. I'll help you take care of it, and you have to tell me what this thing is used for. After saying that, she reached out to grab the emerald ball in his hand, but Xan Lishan dodged it with a wave of his hand. He glared at her and said discontentedly, Are your hands clean? What if you break it? Wait, I'll find a box to put it in first. Bah, how could she be so delicate? Yushu criticized him in her heart. She looked at him coldly and bent down to search in the counter for a while. He took out a round box and carefully put the emerald ball in it before handing it to her. Xan Lishan warned her worriedly, Handle it with care, understand? Don't you dare to break it. If there's even the slightest mistake, I'll fight you to the death. Got it, Yushu answered perfunctorily. She put the box into her bosom and thought that she would take it out and study it carefully when she went back. Yushu left the fan shop and returned to Wangji Tower with Xan Lishan's treasure. As soon as she closed the door, she couldn't wait to take the thing out and take a closer look at it. After looking at it carefully, she finally managed to see clearly what was hidden in the hollow emerald ball. It was a small black bead like a pupil embedded in the emerald eyeball. Yushu looked at the black bead of unknown material. She didn't know why, but she felt it was familiar at first, as if she had seen it somewhere before. She thought about it for a long time, and her spirit suddenly jolted. She hurriedly put down the emerald ball and reached out her left hand. On her index finger, there was an inconspicuous silver ring. If one didn't look closely, no one would be able to tell that there was something mysterious about the ring. Yushu twisted her finger twice and took off the silver ring. Below it, there was a jet-black ring on the end of her finger. It was a gift from Qing Zheng before he left. She didn't know what to do with it, but she was careful to cover it up in case she met someone who knew it. Yushu picked up the emerald ball again and raised it to the window. She squinted at the black bead hidden in it and compared it with the black ring on her hand. The more she looked at it, the more similar it seemed to be made of the same material. This discovery made Yushu's heart skip a beat. Although she was sure that Yunhua and Qing Zheng were related, there was no evidence to prove that they were master and disciple. This was great. If Xan Lishan didn't lie to her, and this emerald ball was really Yunhua's relic, then he would be the eldest senior in Qing Zheng's words. What made Yushu even more excited was the use of this treasure called Zhuge Ai. Looking at Xan Lishan's mysterious look, it could be imagined that he had benefited a lot from this emerald ball. Unlike her, she just remembered to wear the black ring given by Qing Zheng some time ago, and she was confused and didn't know what it was good for. Now that she thought about it, what Qing Zheng took out would not be a simple ornament. The black bead in this emerald ball and the black ring on her hand must be treasures. Yushu wanted to turn around and find Xen Lishan to ask him about it, but she knew that Xen Laowu was a profiteer who wouldn't release the eagle until he saw the rabbit. How could he easily explain it to her? So she suppressed her impulse and curiosity, put on the silver ring again, turned around and took the emerald ball to the balcony on the 3rd floor, and placed it in the Feng Qi pond. After 49 days she would find Xen Lishan and find out the truth. Yushu had a new discovery. In the morning she came to Wangji Tower, but she didn't go home. She stayed upstairs to deduce her rule of the time of calamity, waiting for Shui Rui to come back and discuss it with him. As she waited, it was dark again. Yushu heard the maid talking and knew that Shui Rui had come back from outside. So she packed up her brush and ink, washed her hands and went downstairs to see him. For the sake of investigating the young man who had an affair with the 10th princess when she was still alive, Shui Rui had been out for an entire day today. He couldn't be said to be tired, but he was absolutely worry-free. When he returned and saw Yushu waiting for him, he felt much more relaxed in his heart, and he felt slightly happy as well. "Were you in the restaurant today?" he asked. "I went to the south of the city." Yushu sat down opposite Shui Rui and talked about Xen Lishan. "Brother, do you know the 5th master who was expelled from the Xian family more than 10 years ago?" Yushu knew that the Shui family and the Xian family were related by marriage, so Shui Rui should have heard about the Xian family. As expected, Shui Rui nodded and said, "You mean Xen Lishan?" "I know. Why did you mention him?" Yushu omitted the part where she found someone to make a peachwood fan for her. She simply told Shui Rui about how she met Xen Lishan by chance in the south of the city. In the end, she said excitedly, "Big brother would never expect that Xen Lishan has Yunhua's relic in his possession. It's the same thing that my master gave me back then." Shui Rui was surprised for a moment. He saw Yushu take off 2 rings from her fingers and hand a black ring to him. Shui Rui had long noticed the silver ring on Yushu's hand. He just thought that she was a simple person and did not like gold and jade. Today he found that there was something hidden under it. He took the black ring and looked at it under the light. He frowned and judged, "This thing is neither copper nor iron. It is not jade. What is it?" "I don't know," Yushu said gloomily. "When my master gave it to me, he only told me not to leave my hand. He didn't say what it was for." Not only that, she took off the black ring within a few days after she got it. Fortunately, she did not lose it. She had been hiding it in the corner. It was not until she suffered a few big losses that she remembered to wear it again. So far, she had not found any use for it. While talking, Yushu took Shui Rui upstairs and showed him the emerald ball at the bottom of the feng shui pool. She pointed at the black bead hidden in it for him to identify. Chapter 509. While Princess Shiwen and Rui Zizhu were whispering to each other, Miss Ning and Xen Lu retreated and walked off the bridge. Not long after, they saw a group of young men walking over from the stone path of the garden. The man at the front saw Xen Lu and stopped to greet him. "Xen Lu, I didn't expect you to be invited this year. Is there no one else in Anling? Isn't the gentleman's lotus banquet supposed to invite beauties who look like hibiscus flowers? You think you're a beauty?" Feng Zhamiao? Xen Lu was surprised for a moment before he reacted and retorted, "That's right, is there no one else in Anling? The gentleman's lotus banquet only invites gentlemen. What kind of gentleman are you?" Miss Ning recognized Feng Zhamiao and knew that he was the young master of General Feng's family. She wasn't surprised to see the two bickering. Her gaze fell on the person behind and her eyes lit up for the second time tonight. She saw that the handsome young man was wearing a green silk robe with a jade belt around his waist. His robe was buttoned with beads and a silk scarf was tied around his head. He held a fan in his hand and his figure was tall and straight. He had the air of a scholar and was indescribably gentle and refined. This scholarly young man had a handsome face, especially his black eyes that were like stars under his thick black eyebrows. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed to be filled with love but were fickle. Looking at him made people fall in love with him and fear him. Who knew how many infatuated girls had fallen in love with him? Miss Ning only glanced up and down before hurriedly withdrawing her gaze. In her heart, she was already certain that this young scholar with a pair of peach blossom eyes was one of the 3 people she had wanted to see earlier. She had seen Taoist Jing Chen before, and he did not seem to be as arrogant as the rumors said. He must be the eldest son of the Shui family, Shui Qingbai, the junior minister of the Supreme Court who had solved many major cases. As expected, after arguing with Feng Xiaomiao, XN Lu saw Shui Rui and looked for him. Cousin Shui is here too. Can you say something fair? I'm not a beauty, but is Feng Xiaomiao a gentleman? Shui Rui was sizing up the surroundings in search of Yu Shu's figure when he was called over by XN Lu. He turned around and said to her, "Those who attend the gentleman's hibiscus banquet are not all beauties and gentlemen. I can't say for sure whether Zhao Miao is a gentleman or not, but he's definitely not a vile person." Feng Xiaomiao proudly raised his head. Yes, I am not a gentleman nor a villain." Although Lu was dissatisfied, he couldn't find fault and said, "Lu, he is not a gentleman or a villain." XN Shui Rui smiled and didn't argue. "Lord Shui, are you a gentleman or a vile person?" Everyone turned to see a man walk out from a corner of the flower pond. He wore green clothes and had a blue ribbon tied around his hair. As he walked, his sleeves fluttered in the wind and he wore white boots. Behind him was a crescent moon, illuminating the people in front of him. Seeing this person, Miss Ning's eyes brightened once more. That person had just stopped right before Shui Rui. Two men of different appearances, yet similarly outstanding, stood together, and it instantly drew the attention of the young women that wandered in the vicinity, and there were even some people on the bridgehead that looked over. Shui Rui was clearly aware that Zhu Qingjue was targeting him. He furrowed his eyebrows. It had to be known that the two of them had always minded their own business and never provoked each other. Whether I am a gentleman or a villain, how can I judge for myself? In second young Master Zhu's opinion, am I a villain or a gentleman? Shui Rui raised an eyebrow, asking Zhu Qingjue in response. Zhu Qingjue bluntly said, "In my opinion, you are not a villain, but you are far from being a gentleman." Hearing this, before Shui Rui could say anything, Feng Xiaomiao was the first to speak. "What do you mean by that? You say my brother Rui is not a gentleman, but are you?" Zhu Qingjue paid no attention to him, and he stared straight at Shui Rui as he said, "Shui Qingbi, do you dare compete with me at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet tonight? If I'm able to seize the gold jade hibiscus, then you have to admit that you're a vile person in public." Shui Rui's eyes widened. "And if I win? Then I will be the villain," Zhu Qingjue said without a care in the world. Shui Rui smiled coldly. He slapped the fan in his hand and said, "I don't need you to be a villain. I just want you to answer a few of my questions." Feng Xiaomiao was scratching his ears and cheeks. Seeing that Shui Rui was about to agree, he saw Zhu Qingjue raise his right hand. 5 strikes is the agreement. Whoever disobeys loses. Shui Rui raised his palm. Pa, pa, pa. The two of them made a bet with 3 palms. The surrounding onlookers were shocked, and for a moment there were many discussions. Lu Yi stood in the flower house. He was still angry because of Zhu Qingjue's teasing. He said to the person behind him, "I want to see them fight each other. You better perform well and ruin their plan." 11th Prince, don't worry. I know. Shiwen held Rui Ziju's arm as they stood at the bridgehead. When she heard Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue's conversation from afar, she frowned and turned her head to ask Chui Xn behind her, "Second young Master Zhu and cousin Rui, what's going on? Is there anything that I don't know about recently? When did they become enemies?" Chui Xn was also puzzled. "I didn't hear anything." Shiwen thought it was strange. She looked around and didn't see Zhan Shuiyuan. She asked, "Where is Miss Zhan?" Someone pointed angrily towards the shore. Shiwen looked in that direction and saw Zhan Shuiyuan standing in front of the white-robed Jing Qin, saying something with a shy expression. Disdain flashed in Shiwen's eyes. She didn't say anything else and turned to smile at Rui Ziju. "Cousin is over there. Don't you want to go talk to him?" "No need." Rui Ziju shook her head shyly. Shiwen pulled her close and whispered, "What are you afraid of? Sister is so beautiful tonight that even the gods would be moved. Cousin is just a mortal. Come, I'll go see him with you. I'll give you some courage." Rui Ziju was indeed a smart girl. She didn't pale in the slightest when she stood next to the beautiful Shiwen. The earl's mansion was full of gold and silver. A pampered daughter wouldn't lose out to the golden branches and jade leaves. The string of priceless purple jade tassels on Shiwen's neck was very eye-catching, but in fact, it couldn't compare to the origin of the hibiscus water droplet on Rui Ziju's forehead. This was the relic of Empress Ningxuan, the founder of the Dain kingdom. In the capital city there were several women who used it. Even the imperial concubines and princesses would be jealous. Rui Ziju reluctantly allowed Shiwen to bring her to Shui Rui, while Chui Xn followed behind them unhurriedly. "Brother Rui, second young Master Zhu, I heard you two making a bet from afar. I wonder who will get the 2 gold and jade hibiscus flowers tonight. After the confrontation between Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue, neither of them left. Seeing Shi Wen and Zhu Qingjue, Shui Rui just nodded. Shi Wen thought that he was still angry because of the dispute over the death of the 10th princess at Wangjilu last time. She didn't care about his cold attitude. She smiled and went to talk to Zhu Qingjue. Second young master Zhu only talks about gentlemen. It's boring. Why don't you also evaluate the beauties at tonight's banquet? Zhu Qingjue crossed his arms and looked back at her. He looked at the 2 beauties in front of him. There was no ripple in his eyes. He smiled and said, I haven't seen many beauties. I can't tell if they are good or bad. As he said this, he turned to Shui Rui and raised his hand to signal. I heard that Lord Shui has been a playboy since he was young. You know more about the word beauties than I do. I wonder how many beauties at this banquet caught your eye. I'd like to hear the details. Zhu Qingjue clearly wanted to make things difficult for Shui Rui tonight. How could he casually evaluate beauties? If he was right, he would have a reputation of being a playboy. If he was wrong, he would offend a group of narrow-minded women. The men and women at the banquet didn't know what was going on. When they heard that the eldest young master of the Shui family wanted to evaluate beauties, they couldn't help but come forward. Pairs of beautiful eyes looked at him, waiting to hear what he had to say. Okay, let cousin Rui be the judge. We're all ears. Shi Wen gently pushed Rui Zizhu and secretly winked at her. Rui Zizhu blushed, but she slowly straightened her back. Shui Rui swept a glance at Zhu Qingjue, who was looking for trouble, and then he unhurriedly opened his ink-folding fan. From near to far, he saw that in the brightly lit flower garden, there were numerous beautiful faces in fragrant cosmetics and fresh silk clothes, all of them contending with each other for beauty, and it was a scene of great beauty. 3 years ago, when he was admiring Xiaoai, he was still in the mood to appreciate it. Later on, he was blinded by one of the flowers and suffered the consequences. 3 years later, when he attended the banquet again, he had already found a female confidant. Even if she was beautiful enough to captivate the birds and beasts, or even to obscure the moon and flowers, it had nothing to do with him. At this time, facing the expectant eyes of the crowd, he looked at the bridge in the distance and was lost in thought. When he reached the end of the Permitha bridge, a floating light entered his eyes. His heart suddenly moved and his lips moved. The so-called beauty uses flowers as her appearance, birds as her voice, and the moon as her spirit. The crowd was so engrossed that no one noticed that there was a dazzling figure on the bridge. She was wearing a long silk dress that was whiter than snow. She was slim and slender, and she was strolling leisurely like a cloud, like a light smoke. Willow as her form, jade as her bones, and snow as her muscles. The person on the bridge had dark clouds hanging down her temples. Her head was full of silver pearls, and her black hair was covered in a net. There was a red dot on her forehead, and her eyebrows were slanted. With autumn water as her form and poetry as her heart, I am inseparable. It was her dazzling and translucent body that was shining and moving. It was her cold star-like eyes that stood proudly above the crowd. It was not because of her beauty, but because of her unparalleled heart. However, beauty is not the person in the eyes, but the person in the heart. The corner of Shui Rui's mouth curled up into a smile. At this moment, there was only one figure in his eyes. At this time, the crowd also noticed that something was wrong, and they all turned around. With just a glance, their attention was captured by the woman who was walking under the bridge. For a moment, everyone's eyes flashed with amazement, and they were a little dazzled. They mistakenly thought that they had seen Shui Farong Fairy in her human form. It was really that the beauty was covered from head to toe with a layer of moonlight, and it was too unreal. The first to regain his senses was not Shui Rui, but Zhu Qingjue. He squinted his eyes and looked at the woman who was walking slowly under the bridge. He felt that she looked familiar, as if he had met her before, but he could not remember who she was. It was not until she walked closer to the crowd that he suddenly remembered, and he blurted out, "It's you." Yu Shu held a long silk shawl with one hand, and revealed a string of bright pink crystals on her wrist. She even had to straighten her neck so that the string of pearls on her head would not fall off. Along the way she was secretly complaining, but she did not forget Pei Jing's repeated warnings. She slowly moved towards the crowd. Chapter 5:10. You hide this ring well. Don't let anyone see it. Yu Shu put the black ring back on her left index finger and covered it with the silver ring. She also knew what Shui Rui was worried about. There was something fishy about Yunhua's death. If someone discovered the relationship between Yu Shu and him, it was very likely that it would bring about a fatal disaster to her. All the Zhuge Tong in Mount Xinli were Yunhua's relics. Many people knew about this, so the ring on her hand had become a shameful thing. Apart from you, who else has seen you wearing it? Shui Rui asked worriedly. Yu Shu thought about it and scratched the tip of her nose in embarrassment. She said, no one should have noticed. Master didn't tell me what this ring is used for. I took it off in Yang City and never wore it. I only remembered it not long ago. Shui Rui played with the emerald ball in his hand. Xian Li Shan put this thing in your hand without worry? I guess he didn't tell you its use. You're not a person who will suffer losses. Did you make an exchange? Yu Shu glanced at him and didn't hide it from him. Yes, I kept saying that he was afraid that I would be greedy. He refused to tell me the use of this treasure. He only said that he would tell me after I helped him take care of it for 49 days. 49 days? Then let's wait. Shui Rui put the emerald ball into the silver claw fence and put it back into the wind pool. He turned his head and said to Yu Shu, if he dares to go back on his word, you can tell me again. Yu Shu didn't think much about the meaning of Shui Rui's words. She smiled at him. I don't think he is a person who goes back on his word. It doesn't matter. Shui Rui shrugged noncommittally. He put down the fence and pulled her to sit on the couch beside the corridor. He said, let's not worry about this first. Recently there are so many troubles. Let's go out and relax? What day is tomorrow? Is it convenient for you to go out? You said earlier that you wanted to go out and play. You didn't manage to go out a few times. You must have forgotten about teaching you how to ride a horse. Seeing that tomorrow's weather is good, there's no need to wait any longer. I'll go back and get someone to pack up. I won't bring anyone else. It's just you, me, Xiaoxiu and Jinshuan. Let's go out of the forest to hunt Ma Shu and Xuan? Yu Shu's eyes brightened as she said, what a coincidence. Tomorrow is a sunny day, so I don't have to go to the library. Will Jinshu and Mimi be able to go? That's fine too. We have fewer people, so it's more convenient. After knowing the story of Shui Rui and the 10th princess, Yu Shu's most sympathy is not for the woman who died for no reason, but for Sister Shui who suffered greatly. Although Shui Rui didn't say it clearly, she noticed that Shui Jinshuan had become stupid because of the shock. She was a 13-year-old girl, but she behaved like an 8 or 9-year-old child. Her brain seemed to have stopped at the age when the accident happened. It was really pitiful. Shui Rui patted the back of her hand and decided, that's settled then. You go back early tonight and I'll pick you up tomorrow. Yu Shu asked again, what do I need to bring? Shui Rui lowered his head and pecked her smooth cheek and then he said, just bring them along. The next day at dawn, Yu Shu was woken up by Yu Xiaoxiu's call at the door. She yawned and got up to wash up. After hearing that she had put on her clothes, Yu Xiaoxiu went into the room and kept urging her, Sister, can you hurry up? Sister, can you hurry up? Brother Shui will be here soon. However, Yu Shu put on her boots calmly and said, if he comes he won't run away if we don't leave. Look at how anxious you are. If you keep urging me I won't go. I'll go back to bed and continue sleeping. With that, she pretended to kick off her boots and lie back. Yu Xiaoxiu rushed forward to pull her and shouted bitterly, Sister! Yu Shu flicked him on the forehead, glanced at the little yellow hair who was sleeping soundly beside her pillow, picked up Kim Bao and stuffed him into Yu Xiaoxiu's arms. Oh! Kim Bao, whose sleep was disturbed, screamed. Go feed it something to eat and polish its fur. We'll take it with us today. Yu Shu glanced at Kim Bao, who was struggling to jump out of Yu Xiaoxiu's hands. She thought to herself, does Shui Jinshuan like small animals? It was not even 7 in the morning when the siblings sat on Shui Rui's carriage. Yu Shu's Xiaohong and Shui Rui's Magatama were placed on the carriage at the back of the carriage and were brought to the outskirts of the city. In the carriage, Yu Shu sat next to Shui Jinshuan. She pointed at Yu Xiaoxiu with a smile and introduced him to her. This is my younger brother. He's 1 or 2 years younger than you. Just call him Xiaoxiu. Shui Jinshuan was very reserved. He hadn't seen Yu Shu for a long time, so he was a lot more unfamiliar with her. When he heard her speak, he only looked up quickly at Yu Xiaoxiu, then lowered his head and said, Yu Xiaoxiu, on the other hand, was much more cheerful than her. Under Yu Shu's gaze, he obediently called out, Sister Shui. He rummaged around in his sleeves and hesitantly took out Jin Bao, revealing half of his furry head for her to see. This is Kim Bao. My sister and I raised him. In fact, Yu Xiaoxiu didn't think that bringing Kim Bao out was a good idea at all. He once brought Kim Bao to Baichuan Academy and accidentally scared a few girls to tears. Looking at the timid look of the Shui family's miss, he was really afraid that she would scream and jump up in the next moment. However, who knew that Xue Jinshuan didn't do as he thought? Her eyes fell on his hand and blinked twice. Her eyes were wide open, showing not fear but curiosity. Squeak. Although Kim Bao looked shifty-eyed, he was not afraid of people or light like a mouse. As soon as he showed his head and saw a new face in the car, he didn't jump up and down but squatted on Yu Xiaoxiu's palm. He was fat and crooked his neck, holding his tail with his two paws, and looked at Xue Jinshuan with his bright black beady eyes. His little appearance was indescribably pleasing. This time Xue Jinshuan couldn't move her eyes away. Seeing this, Yu Shu took Xue Jinshuan's cold little hand and led her to touch Kim Bao. She also told her, "Don't worry. This little thing doesn't bite and eats with us. He just washed last night and is very clean." Xue Jinshuan shrank her shoulders, but she didn't refuse Yu Shu's action. When her fingers touched the fluffy ball, her heart couldn't help but soften. She looked at Kim Bao with her eyes and liked it even more. Therefore, in a short while, Kim Bao was in Xue Jinshuan's hand. Under the high-pressure threat of Yu Shu, it didn't dare to move or bite randomly. Its two small white whiskers trembled and licked its paws obediently. Sometimes it would snort a few times so as not to be naughty and get hit on the head by Yu Shu later. Fortunately, Xue Rui's nerves were strong enough. He didn't frown when he saw Yu Shu and her brother playing with the mouse for his sister. They talked all the way and the carriage soon arrived outside the city. There were fewer and fewer pedestrians around. They didn't get off the carriage until they walked into the wide forest and put down the horses. When they came here they brought 3 horses. Xue Rui was very thoughtful. They didn't know where he got a yellow horse that was about to mature, but it was for Yu Xiaoxiu to use as a ride. The 3 of them changed horses. Xue Jinshuan and Kim Bao stayed in the carriage, and the group continued to walk into the forest. Gui San and Hadaku, who accompanied them, hung bows and arrows in case they encountered beasts in the forest. Chapter 5:11. After returning from his outing yesterday, Xue Rui had a good night's sleep. He slept all the way until dawn. He woke up early at Wangji Tower and went to the Yamen to take attendance. The Supreme Court of Justice was idle at the beginning of the month, so Xue Rui sat for a while with a few of his colleagues before leaving first, and he made a trip to Qinyuan Street. After an hour, he returned once more and there was a report in his hand. Xue Rui entered the study at the back of the hall where he usually rested. He closed the door and sat down by the window. He cut open the seal and shook out a thin piece of paper. After looking at it carefully, he frowned. From Yu Shu's divination, she could only confirm that the man who had an affair with the 10th princess was Xiao Ji. From this clue, there were many young talents in the capital who had the qualifications. However, from the 10th princess's identity, there were only a few men who had the opportunity to enter the palace and get close to her. One was the left deputy commander of the Yulin Royal Guards, the nephew of Empress Xu, the 3rd young master of the Yin family, the 1st family of Anling Yin Yuanrong. Another was the assistant secretary of the Wenhua Hall, Kong Qi, who passed the imperial examinations at the age of 15. The last person was the medicine judge of the imperial hospital, the 2nd young master of the Zhu family, which was ranked number 1 among the 12 constabularies in the capital, Zhu Qingjue. He was also the only son of the current head teacher. These 3 people, like him, were the best of the younger generation in Anling City. In terms of character, Xue Rui felt that Yin San was the most suspicious. Yin Yuanrong was famous for being a playboy. In the brothel at the foot of the capital, there were some famous beauties who had hooked up with Yin San. It was not surprising that such a playboy would do something like seducing the princess. However, in terms of talent, Xue Rui felt that the 10th princess would not fall head over heels for a man like Yin Yuanrong. The possibility of it being Zhu Qingjue was higher. Speaking of the 2nd son of the Zhu family, even Xue Rui had to call him an extraordinary person. Since the appointment of the Celestial Commissioner more than 10 years ago, the Zhu family has become the number 1 among the 12 prefectures. To be able to be called an aristocratic family, they all have their own unique skills passed down in their family. For example, the Xian family's creation, the Lu family's fortune, the Sima family's star chart, and the Zhu family's secret art of reading people. Zhu Qingjue was the only son of the great Tiandi. Just when everyone had no doubt that he would inherit his father's legacy, he publicly refused to participate in the Great Yen examination. At a young age, he caused a ruckus and ran away from home. When he returned, he had become the world-renowned disciple of the medicine king of southern Miao. Disregarding the Zhu family's reputation, he set up a stall on Qinyuan Street and practiced medicine for free. Along the way he had cured many commoners. Because of this he became famous. There were rumors among the people that if one consumed his prescription, regardless of whether it was a minor or major illness, they would all be cured. 3 years ago, Zhu Qingjue gained the nickname of the Young Medicine King. After the emperor made an exception and invited him to the imperial hospital, no one dared to gossip about him anymore. Zhu Qingjue's deeds were used as a model by the upper-class families. Often, the elders would say to the younger generation, "If you really have the ability, then learn from the second son of the Zhu family. Go out and wander the world alone. When you come back, we'll see if you're a hero or a coward." Thinking about Zhu Qingjue, Shui Rui had mixed feelings. 3 years ago, after the incident with the 10th princess, he bid farewell to his grandfather and left the capital. Shui Lingnan had also said something like this: "If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But once you leave, you have to change your appearance. Don't use the name of the Shui family. Let's see if you're not the eldest son of the Shui family anymore. Let's see if there are still people who think highly of you in this world. Let's see what you can achieve." Compared to Zhu Qingjue's high profile at that time, Shui Rui's departure from the capital was silent. He'd silently left and silently returned, and people who knew the truth only knew that he'd traveled far away because he was sad about the death of the 10th princess, yet no one knew exactly where he was during the period he left. Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue, one was from a famous family, and the other was from an aristocratic family. They were both young and promising. In the eyes of the people, the former followed the rules while the latter was rebellious. They were the two clearest examples of how the adults in the capital used to teach their children. These two were often compared by others. However, there was not much interaction between them. At most, they knew each other. In addition, no one knew that they had a small conflict. Therefore, Shui Rui didn't have any friendship with Zhu Qingjue, but he didn't have a good impression of him either. He thought about each of the three suspects. After he had a clear idea, he lit the candle and burned the report in his hand. Yin Yuanrong, Kong Qi and Zhu Qingjue. Who was the man who made the 10th princess seek death and caused him to bear the crime? He must find out. In a few days, the gentleman's hibiscus banquet would be held. Other young ladies who received invitation to the banquet would have new clothes and jewelry. However, Yushu didn't spend any effort to prepare. She only let the kidney bean milk wash a summer dress to wear on that day. Most of her time was spent on repairing the law of the time of calamity. She didn't pay attention, but it didn't mean that others didn't. That morning, she had just eaten breakfast at home when Pei Jing came to visit. Yushu heard the gatekeeper's report and went to the living room in the front yard to see him. "Uncle, why are you free today? Did you sell the crystals?" When Yushu saw that he specially came to visit, she thought it was some good news. She was short of money recently and couldn't wait to sell some of the crystals. Pei Jing said, "What's the hurry? It's not the time yet. I came to ask you today. I heard that there is a gentleman's hibiscus banquet every year on the 6th day of the 6th month. Were you invited?" Yushu didn't understand and nodded. "I received the invitation." Pei Jing was happy and asked, "I heard that Master Su made a whole set of crystal objects for you. Have you taken care of them?" Speaking of this, Yushu couldn't help but feel a little depressed. According to her original intention, it was best to carve the crystals into small and exquisite objects. Who would have thought that the craftsman, Master Su, would be so excited that he would take the 4 colored crystals she had left over from last time and carve them out into a set of jewelry, including a hairpin with flowers and beads, a necklace with earrings and bracelets, and inlaid with gold and silver. It was exquisite, it was beautiful, it was beautiful, it was beautiful, but who would have the money to buy such a luxurious set of jewelry? And they're all taken care of. Pei Jing clapped his hands and said, "That's good. Listen to me. You can wear all of these crystals on the day of the gentleman's hibiscus banquet. Let's try to catch people's attention. After the banquet, I can start asking for a price." What did the gentleman's hibiscus banquet lack the least? Handsome men and beautiful women? Gifted scholars and beautiful women? No, they weren't. Most of the people at the banquet were rich and idle people. Yushu's crystals were unforgettable. It wasn't that people didn't go to several business associations to inquire about them. When Pei Jing heard the news, he held the items in his hands and didn't put them out. Only a few days ago at the merchants' gathering did he let Madame Qin wear 2 of them to show her face, letting people know that he had goods in his hands. In the past 2 days, people came to him one after another to bid for the crystals. Unfortunately, the price was not satisfactory. Pei Jing refused to budge, planning an opportunity to let more people see this rare object. Now that the opportunity had come, how could he let it go? Moreover, he had Yushu as his signature, so it would be a waste not to use it. Yushu understood the meaning of Pei Jing's words. Her eyes lit up. She also felt that this was a good idea. She immediately agreed, but soon after she began to worry. To match that exquisite set of crystals, she couldn't wear the clothes she prepared before. Seeing that there were only a few days left until the banquet, where would she go to make suitable clothes? Pei Jing heard her worry and laughed, saying, "What are you afraid of? Uncle is in charge of half of the business of the Tihan Business Association. He doesn't lack good materials and good tailors. Let's go, I'll go with you to pick out a set of jewelry. Then we'll find someone to do the tailoring and embroidery for you. We'll ask your aunt to find a rouge girl with nimble hands. You must be in the limelight that day and people won't be able to take their eyes off you." Hearing this, Yushu imagined Pei Jing's colorful head at the banquet, so bright that it blinded people's eyes. The corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch as she looked at Pei Jing, who was rubbing his palms together. She regretted agreeing to this job. Okay? On the 5th day of June, Yushu finished Fang Zijing's morning class and went out of Shushui Hall with Situ Qinglan. On the way they talked about the pushing method of chess scripture. When they walked to the corridor in the east corner, they were stopped by someone. "You Swansea." Yushu stopped and looked at a young male student in front of her. She didn't know him either. "I'm Song Ming, a 9th grade E-master." The man saluted her and said, "Academician Jing invites you to the tea house." It turned out that he was a messenger. Hearing that Jing Chen was looking for her, Yushu secretly thought that there was news about the Book of Fantasy Goddesses. So she thanked the messenger. After he left, she turned to say hello to Situ Qinglan and lied casually. "A few days ago, I asked Academician Jing for a question. There should be an answer now. I'll go and have a look. You can go first." Situ Qinglan didn't doubt her and left with her. Yushu went to the garden alone. As soon as Yushu entered the tea house, she saw Jing Chen standing under the window. His back was still elegant and outstanding. She didn't know where he was looking. When Jing Chen heard the footsteps, he turned around and saw Yushu walking toward him with a cold expression. In a moment he came to his senses. His fingers shook slightly, and an acacia leaf in his palm fell from the window. "You're looking for me?" Yushu didn't ask about the Book of Fantasy Goddesses. She didn't want Jing Chen to notice her intention too early. Jing Chen raised his hand to close half of the window. He turned to face her and said, "I asked the great teacher about the origin of the Book of Fantasy Goddesses. Would you like to hear it?" Yushu's eyebrows twitched. She pretended to be sarcastic. "If I don't want to hear it, you won't tell me?" Although Jing Chen was used to her targeting him now, he still couldn't help feeling a little obscure. He pointed to the tea table beside him and said, "Let's sit down and talk." After they sat down, Jing Chen didn't keep her in suspense. He spoke again and directly asked the question that Yushu was most concerned about. Chapter 5:12. Anyone who covets the Book of Fantasy Fairy 6 Rens will be killed without mercy. Yushu's eyes moved and she thought of Yunhua's death. She was more and more sure that he was also commissioned by Qing Zheng to destroy the book, and he even died in this matter. Book of Fantasy Fairy 6 Rens was indeed a secret book handed down since the founding of the Dan Empire. The relic of Empress Ningzhen and the instructions of Emperor Anwu were enough to prove that this book was very precious and important. "So, you still haven't seen this book with your own eyes?" Yushu asked. Jing Chen shook his head and his voice was helpless. "If I wasn't a disaster in Dan, I wouldn't even be qualified to know the existence of Book of Fantasy Fairy 6 Rens. How could I have the opportunity to see it with my own eyes? Xiaoyu, I'll tell you this, but you must not leak any of it, lest it brings you trouble." Yushu secretly sneered. Did she think that she had enough troubles? Just the 3 words "life breaker" was like a knife hanging over her head, falling down at any time. She had no choice but to say no. "You can rest assured that I'm not a fool." "You." Jing Chen wanted to say something but stopped. He tentatively asked, "Xiaoyu, I told you everything I know. Can you believe my words now?" "Believe you? What do you mean? Do you mean that I'm the fate breaker, or do you mean that I have to marry you and have children to break your fate and stabilize the world?" Yushu looked straight at Jing Chen and her voice was clear. "Even if I believe you, so what? Do you think that as long as I believe you, I will be willing to be manipulated by you? Jing Chen, it's not the first day you know me. You should know what kind of temper I have. I'm a stubborn person. Instead of coaxing and pestering me, it's better to go directly to the people above and make it clear. Let's see if I'll do it or not if you put a knife on my neck." She sounded tough on the surface, but in her heart she thought, I can't ask about the Book of Mystic Fairy 6 Rens from Jing Chen in a short period of time, lest it arouse the suspicion of the celestial commissioner. Jing Qin heard Yu Shu's resolute words, leaving no room for negotiation. He could only sigh and stare into her cold eyes with his clear eyes. He said in an extremely serious tone, "I'll still say the same thing. I won't force you. Xiaoyu, don't be afraid. Trust me, I will protect you this time." Yu Shu snorted and declined to comment. She was not a credulous person. Jing Qin had repeatedly broken his promise with her. Wasn't it a fool's dream to ask her to believe him again? "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first." Now that she had gotten the information, Yu Shu had no intention of staying any longer and was about to leave. Jing Qin hurriedly stood up and called out to her from behind. "Xiaoyu, wait." Yu Shu turned around and frowned impatiently. "What else do you have to say? Are you going to the hibiscus gentleman's banquet tomorrow?" Hearing this, Yu Shu's heart skipped a beat. An idea flashed through her mind. She curled her lips and looked at him mockingly. "What? Don't tell me you want to use this opportunity to fight for a hibiscus flower and talk about marriage with me on the spot?" Jing Chen's handsome face blushed slightly after being seen through by her. He lowered his eyes and he looked down and said, "I want to, don't even think about it." Yu Shu interrupted him with a wave of her hand. She narrowed her eyes and threatened, "If you dare bring it in front of me, I will throw it at your face." That night, Xue Rui returned to the residence and was immediately summoned to the study by Minister Xue. "Grandfather, you were looking for me?" Xue Lingnan put down the memorial in his hand and put down his pen. He pointed at the chair opposite the desk and gestured for Xue Rui to sit down. He then picked up a cup of ginseng tea and slowly took a sip. "The day before yesterday you went out with Jinshuan?" Xue Rui's eyes flickered. He nodded. "Third sister has been cooped up in the courtyard for a while. Since I have finished my work, I found some time to bring her out for a stroll on horseback." "Oh," Xue Lingnan asked indifferently, "who did you go with?" Xue Rui stopped for an instant and then he said with a light smile, "Grandfather, you ought to have heard of her. She's the female fortune teller Yu Shu, that's ranked third in the Grand Yen examination's 2 rankings." Xue Lingnan's expression did not change. He lightly patted his teacup and said, "I have heard that you are very close with this fortune teller. At the beginning of the year you opened a restaurant. Did you hire her to be the manager?" Xue Rui's fingers on his knees quietly retracted. He calmly faced Xue Lingnan's questioning gaze and said, "That is indeed the case. Yu Shu is an astute woman and I like her very much. I saw that she had a bright future ahead of her, so I wanted to guide her into officialdom. After interacting with her for a long time, I took her as my sworn sister. Because she helped me manage the accounts of the restaurant, she was more diligent in her daily activities." After a long speech, Xue Rui did not even stumble. It was as if he had no other intentions towards Yu Shu. He simply cherished her talent and friendship. Xue Lingnan stroked his beard. His indifferent gaze swept across Xue Rui's face. A moment later he said, "You are already a grown-up. There is no need for this old man to teach you what you should and shouldn't do. You must always remember what your status is." Xue Lingnan was usually busy with the affairs of the imperial court, so he didn't pay much attention to Xue Rui's matters. But not asking about it didn't mean that he didn't care. So long as Xue Rui knew his place, then he could turn a blind eye to everything Xue Rui did, but if Xue Rui paid lip service to Xue Rui, then Xue Lingnan wouldn't condone it. "I will remember." Xue Rui lowered his head. A trace of darkness flashed across his eyes. Xue Lingnan nodded in satisfaction. Then he changed the topic and said, "Previously when I talked to you about the marriage with the Earl, you refused. Now that 3 months have passed, don't try to prevaricate. I think this marriage is very good. If you delay it for a few days, I am afraid that someone else will beat you to it. Tomorrow is the gentleman's hibiscus banquet. The young lady of the Rui family will also be there. When the time comes, it will be best if you can get a golden jade hibiscus. Otherwise, don't let those scheming people snatch it away." Earl Rui was the Empress' paternal family. Even the Yin family had to give way to them. Most importantly, the Empress did not have a son. If the Xue family intended to help Lu Tan ascend the throne in the future, they must pull this family together. Marriage was the best idea. Xue Rui was not surprised at Xue Lingnan's instructions. He calmly clasped his fingers under the table. Facing Xue Lingnan's scrutinizing gaze he said, "Grandfather, don't worry. I will definitely fight for it." Xue Lingnan stared at his gentle face for a while. When he could not see any clues, he finally revealed a withered smile and said, "Your mother has recovered from her illness. Why don't you go visit her?" "Yes." Shui Rui looked at Shui Lingnan's appearance that was much older than in his memories, and he thought in his heart. I don't know when it started, but being able to visit my mother has become a type of reward given to me by the old man before me. I was once willing to endure this hardship, yet now it has instead become a type of reminder. Chapter 5:13. It was the 6th day of the 6th lunar month. Perhaps it was to celebrate the festival, and even the heavens added to the fun. It rained early in the morning. When the sun came out, it was clear and cool, which made people feel good for no reason. Yushu had nothing to do in the morning, so she went to Wangji Tower. The weather was cool, so she asked the waiter to bring a rattan chair to the balcony. She warmed a pot of scented tea and sat next to the feng shui pool, reading the 2 volumes of chaotic sky divination record that had been kept at the bottom of the box for many days. When she wanted to learn this strange art of Mount Longhu, no one taught her. She had to memorize it several times. Probably because of her limited aptitude, she memorized 10% of it but could only understand less than 10%. As a result, she lost interest in it for a period of time and put it on the shelf. Now that Jing Chen wanted to take advantage of her, he reminded her of this astrology art. Now she had other plans in mind. In order to deal with being forced to do something in the future, she wanted to pave a way for herself as much as possible. The more skills she learned, the more capital she had to protect herself. She sat here for the whole morning. Who knew that when it was almost noon, Shui Rui also came? The two did not make an appointment in advance, so it was a bit unexpected that they would meet in a restaurant on such a day. Dinghua Hall is going to hold a banquet today. What are you doing here? Go home and dress up. Shui Rui walked to the front from behind Yushu and put one hand on her left shoulder. He glanced at the book in her hand and vaguely saw the clear handwriting on the paper. Yushu closed the book and tilted her head to look at him. Seeing that he was wearing a formal official robe, she smiled and teased him. I'm fine. No matter how I dress up, I only have 1 nose and 2 eyes. I can't be a fairy. On the other hand, you are handsome. If you dress up well, I don't know how many young ladies you can charm at the gentleman's banquet. Find me a beautiful sister-in-law. Hearing this, Shui Rui laughed angrily. He raised his hand to pinch the tip of her delicate nose and pinched it. He lowered his head and got closer to her. Do you want to call yourself sister-in-law? Yushu's vision darkened. Seeing that he was about to kiss her, she quickly covered his mouth with one hand and slid down from the chair. She stood a few steps away with the book under her arm and leaned against the fence. She blinked at him. Do you want to be my brother-in-law? I wanted to, but you didn't agree. Shui Rui raised his eyebrows and reached out to pull her again. He happened to hold her hand that was holding the book and said, Tonight, Jing Chen will also attend the gentleman banquet. Do you think he will do something? Hearing his words, Yushu remembered that she had met Jing Chen at the tea hut yesterday. She frowned slightly and said, I was just about to tell you that I met Jing Chen yesterday and heard him talk about the reason for the fairy maiden 6 letters. Yushu repeated Jing Chen's words. When she said kill without mercy, Shui Rui's expression changed slightly. He was silent for a moment and said in a low voice, This is not much different from our previous speculation. Yunhua probably died because of this. Shu, you must be careful. Don't let others know that you have a relationship with him. Put away that ring. Don't wear it. I'm always worried that other than Xian Lishan, someone else will recognize it. Yushu thought for a while but did not agree. She shook her head and said, Master once told me not to take off this ring at any time. I didn't listen to him at first and disasters happened one after another. Later when I wore it, it seemed to be much smoother. I don't know what is the relationship between the two. But Xian Lishan said that this is a treasure. I guess it will have the effect of turning misfortune into blessing. Just like the adversity blocking stone on Jing Chen. If that is the case, it is better to wear it. Don't worry, I will hide it well and not let others see it. After listening to her explanation, Shui Rui did not force her anymore. He turned to ask, Just now you said that you met Jing Chen. He only told you this and nothing else? Yushu glanced at him and said, He asked me if I will go to the banquet tonight. Shui Rui showed a trace of doubt on his face. He laughed and said, Why did he ask this? If you go, just go. Can he still fight for a golden jade hibiscus and give it to you? After he finished speaking, he saw Yushu's expression changed. He was stunned and then said in surprise, Don't tell me that he really intends to do this. Didn't they say that they found a substitute for you to lure the snake out of the hole? Then he showed his good side to you with great fanfare at the banquet. What is his purpose? Yushu sneered, How do I know what they are thinking? Maybe they think that Zhang Shuiyuan is attracting enough attention now, so they want to drag me out to avoid being exposed. After all, I had a friendship with Jing Chen before, and it's not that no one knows. But few people know that we have broken off our friendship these days. She thought it through. From the moment Jing Chen told the Tiddy that she was the one who broke his life, her business was no longer up to her. Shui Rui looked at her face and his expression changed back and forth. After a few moments he returned to normal. He rubbed her slender fingers and comforted her. No matter what, I will be with you. Yushu turned around and saw his calm look. She felt much more at ease. She breathed a sigh of relief and turned her eyes to talk about his business. Don't keep talking about me. You are the troublesome one tonight. Commandery Princess Shiwen set a trap for you. She is trying her best to snatch the golden jade hibiscus. Let's see what you will do when she is sent to you. Shui Rui said, what else can I do? I will refuse her and make her give up. Yushu was very satisfied with his attitude, but she pretended to be worried and said, aren't you afraid that you will make her angry and cause more trouble? Shui Rui touched his chin and thought for a while. He said casually, it's still too early to say that. The people who will go to Dinghua Hall tonight are all capable people. Which one of them is not skilled in both the pen and the sword? But there are only 2 golden jade hibiscus. It's not certain whether she will get it. You don't know that I also wanted to fight for one 3 years ago, but I didn't get it in the end. Yushu also knew that Dinghua Hall would be lively tonight. She looked at Shui Rui and her eyes were filled with memories. She seemed to be thinking of the scene 3 years ago. Maybe there was also the beautiful 10th princess. She was a little unhappy in her heart. She snorted and pulled his hand in front of her. She rolled up his sleeve and revealed his wrist. She bit it hard. She only let go when she heard him gasp. She stretched out her finger and gently touched his angular jaw. She smiled and said, if it wasn't because of that troublesome person who can't let others know that we are in a relationship, I will snatch a hibiscus for you tonight no matter what. We'll make you happy. Shui Rui was dazzled by her delicate and arrogant smile, and he felt strangely delighted in his heart. In the next moment, his brows eased up, and he stared at her with eyes that were filled with tender affection as he said to her in a warm voice, I should say that. As he finished speaking, he pulled her hand down and pulled her to his chest. He stroked her stiff back and stroked her hair. Next time before you bite me, ask me. I was thinking of you just now. Chapter 5:14. In the afternoon, she temporarily separated from Shui Rui. Yushu fished out the whole set of crystals from the foam pond one by one. She wiped them clean with a cotton cloth, put them in a mahogany box and took them home. Pei Jing had already prepared clothes, shoes and socks in a hurry, as well as carefully selected rouge girls, waiting for her at Zhao Hui's house. Seeing that she came back at this time, he couldn't help urging her, why are you still running around today? What time is it? Go back to your room to take a bath and freshen up. If you stay any longer, I'll go out to find you. Did you bring the things back? Pei Jing counted on Yushu to be a living signboard so that the crystals she had raised could be sold at a sky-high price. Therefore, compared to Yushu, he paid more attention to tonight's hibiscus gentleman's banquet. I brought them back. Yushu handed the heavy mahogany box to him. Crystals were psychic gems. The longer they were soaked in the foam pond, the brighter they became. Generally, it would take 7 days for them to be finished. The set in her hands had been raised in the foam pond for half a month. Pei Jing carefully took the box and put it on the table by the window. He rubbed his fingers and slowly opened the box. In an instant he was dazzled. Crystals of various colors were piled up together. They were pink, yellow, purple and white, full of watery light. Even though Pei Jing had seen it once 2 days ago, he couldn't help but click his tongue at this time. His mind was shaken. He held his breath and closed the box again. He still felt a little dizzy. Originally he was 80% confident, but now it became 10%. Okay, go in and get ready. This is Song Yangzi, who is in charge of dressing and combing hair. This is Huan Yangzi, who is in charge of making perfume and rouge. They are all people I borrowed from the Hengwu restaurant in the north of the city. Pei Jing introduced them to Yushu, and then reminded the 2 ladies in the suitcases, take care of them. I'll have to trouble you 2 ladies to tidy up my niece. Make sure her clothes and jewelry are ready. As for her makeup and face, it must match this set of jewelry. The 2 ladies had already sized up Yushu. They smiled at Pei Jing and said, Boss Pei, don't worry. This lady looks clean and elegant. It's best to take care of her. She also has such good clothes and jewelry. We'll take care of her properly. Just wait. When we come out later, we'll give you a beauty. Hearing that, Yu Shu curled her lips and thought to herself, what beauty. It's just a moving counter that's used to hang crystals. The curtain of night had just fallen, and the main street in front of the Dinghua Hall in the northern part of the city was already bustling with people and carriages. It was the annual Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet. Other than unmarried noble ladies and unmarried young talents, there were also many officials and nobles in the capital who came to join in the fun and watch the fun. The empress was ill and this year's banquet was hosted by noble consort Shui. They borrowed the Xiang Wang Fu's side restaurant. Xiang Wang Fei would definitely be there. There should be someone else from the palace, but it was unknown which concubine would be accompanying. On the street, a green sedan came with a person and a horse. The person on the horse was turning his head to talk to the person in the sedan. I was not supposed to be here tonight, but my mother got a favor card from Xiang Wang Fei and sent me here. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm still drinking with the men in the camp. Feng Zhaomiao rode on the horse and complained to Shui Rui in the sedan. He looked very dissatisfied with Lady Feng forcing him to drink water. He was younger than Shui Rui by 3 to 5 years and had not passed the age where he liked to play around. It was not that there was no one in the room to accompany him in bed, but women were not as attractive to him as good wine and brothers. Shui Rui did not agree with his words and reprimanded him instead. You are not young anymore and should be sensible. Don't always let General Furen worry for you. I heard that you fought with someone in the army 2 days ago and General Feng came to apologize for you. I see that you are alive and kicking today. Could it be that you managed to get old Furen to come over and not get beaten by your father? Feng Zhaomiao smiled embarrassedly and said guiltily, it's all because of that boy. He's just a Shu son of the second branch of the Yin family and he dared to strut around in the camp and bully people as he pleased. He even pretended to be a big-tailed eagle in front of me. It was already a light punishment that I did not beat him until his teeth fell all over the floor. I only had a few drops of blood from his nose and he was crying for his parents. He was afraid that Shui Rui would blame him again if he continued to ask, so he quickly changed the topic. Brother Rui, didn't the Lotus branch also receive the banquet invitation? Why didn't I see her? Didn't she come with you? Feng Zhaomiao ran into Yu Shu and Shui Rui hugging each other in the restaurant that day and guessed that the relationship between them was unusual. So he was a little puzzled when he did not see Yu Shu. Shui Rui was sensitive and found out the meaning of Feng Zhaomiao's words. Thinking of Yu Shu's current situation, he said without thinking, tonight is the Hibiscus Gentlemen's Banquet. It will be criticized if she comes with me. Feng Zhaomiao was stunned and wanted to say something, but he heard a whistling sound behind him. In the blink of an eye, 2 horses leaped past him and startled the horse under him. But he heard a hearty laughter. Ah, 11th Prince, you have to admit defeat. The snow-treading horse under you is now mine. Then there was an exasperated voice. Zhu Air. How dare you play tricks with me? Shui Rui's gaze flickered when he heard this voice, and he lifted the curtain of the palanquin with one hand, causing him to see that there were 2 horses that stood in opposition under the lanterns a few meters ahead of him. The 11th Prince, Lu Yi, was flying into a rage out of humiliation as he raised his horsewhip and pointed it at the young man on the crimson-red horse before him. In an instant, everyone on the street turned around to look at him. The man on the red horse was in his 20s. He wore a green robe, had long arms and legs and his black hair was tied up. His forehead was full and he had thick eyebrows and long eyes. He sat high on the back of the horse and looked down with one arm holding the reins. His movements were free and easy and he looked heroic. Shui Rui recognized him at a glance. He was one of the 3 people he suspected had something to do with the 10th princess's suicide. He was the number 1 aristocratic family in the capital, second young master Zhu Qingjue. Zhu Qingjue seemed to feel the gaze from afar. He turned his head and met Shui Rui's probing eyes. 4 eyes met and 2 pairs of sword-like eyebrows raised. Under the night lights, it was like 2 swords clashing and sparks flew. Shui Rui gently nodded and let down the curtain. Zhu Qingjue's mouth twitched. He dismounted and threw the reins to an attendant. He then said to Lu Yi who was shouting at him, 11th Prince, lower your voice. I can see that your blood and qi are deficient, and your kidney and spleen are weak. It should be caused by indulging in sensual pleasures. If you don't want to leave a hidden illness, I will give you a prescription. Find me after today's banquet. He did not care about Lu Yi's expression and walked into the Dinghua Hall with his hands behind his back. Feng Zhaomiao saw this scene and clicked her tongue. She bent down and said to Shui Rui, Brother Rui, did you see that? In the entire capital, second young master Zhu is the most arrogant person. Even the 11th prince is slightly inferior. Chapter 5:15. In the Dinghua Hall, guests came one after another. The person in charge of the palace had not arrived yet. In the back garden of the Dinghua Hall, there was a natural lake. It was the only place where there was running water. This exquisite feng shui hall was given by the late emperor to His Majesty when he was still a prince. Later, when His Majesty succeeded the throne, he gave it to his younger brother, Prince Xiang. Usually the Dinghua Hall did not allow outsiders to enter. Only on a good day like today could it be lively. On the shore of the lake, there were a few waterside pavilions, and the shadows of people could be seen. On the surface of the lake, there was a winding bridge, and the bridge was densely covered with lanterns, like a colorful dragon lying on the surface of the water. In the middle of the lake, there was an octagonal pavilion. In the pavilion there was a musician playing a zither and a bell. Xen Lu met Situ Qinglan outside a greenhouse. Miss Ning came with her. The three girls walked on the bridge together. At this time on the bridge there were many dazzling people wearing fragrant clothes. The girls invited tonight were all dressed up meticulously, wearing new clothes and accessories. Even if they weren't fighting for the one and only golden jade hibiscus, they still wanted to show off their elegant demeanor at this annual banquet so that they wouldn't fall behind others. Look, there is a big group of koi. Xen Lu lies on the railing of the bridge, leaning forward to point at a large carp swimming under the bridge. Under the illumination of the bridge lights, it looks like a huge colorful cloud drifting across the ink-black bottom of the water. Situ Qinglan saw it and couldn't help but exclaim, "Apart from the imperial garden of the palace, I'm afraid you can only see such a group of three-colored danding in the Dinghua Hall. Last year I raised a pair in the wind pond, but they were not as colorful as the ones in the lake." At this time a laugh came from the side. This girl is really knowledgeable. Koi raised in the running water is indeed the best. Situ Qinglan and the other two girls turned around and saw a young man standing a few steps away. He had a dignified appearance and was nodding at them politely. However, his eyes were clearly on Situ Qinglan, who was dressed in a yellow dress and had an elegant appearance. Situ Qinglan blushed and took half a step back. When she was about to greet him, she heard Xen Lu call someone out. "Second brother Qi, why are you alone? Where's young lord? Aren't the two of you inseparable from each other?" The visitor was Grand Scholar Qi's second young master, Qi Mingxiu, and the young lord that Xen Lu mentioned was Count Zhongyong's young master Rui Lin. Qi Mingxiu retracted his gaze and said helplessly to the lively Xen Lu, "Today Ruilin wants to bring younger sister along, I did not go with him. Moreover, the two of us are just young brothers, it is true that we often see each other, we are not as clingy as you say." Xen Lu curled his lips and said, "Young Master Shui and Feng Xiaomiao are sworn brothers, but they are not as close as you two." Ahem. Qi Mingxiu glanced at Situ Qinglan awkwardly. To prevent Xen Lu from blabbering, he quickly changed the topic and asked, "May I know which mansion this young lady is from? May I know your surname?" In such a huge city like Enling, some people lived for more than 10 years but never saw each other. Especially between men and women, they only heard of each other's names but never saw each other. After all, Situ Qinglan was from an aristocratic family, and she was slightly older so she did not be shy or rude. She bowed to Qi Mingxiu and said, "My surname is Situ." Xen Lu interrupted, "Sister Situ is a student of our Taisher library and 8th grade Yisher. Her grandfather is academician Fang who teaches magic." "Miss Situ, I am Qi Mingxiu, sorry for my rudeness." Qi Mingxiu also bowed to Situ Qinglan. A man and a woman who were strangers met for the first time at this banquet and asked each other about their families' names. This was not the only situation that happened. Qi Mingxiu was eloquent so he quickly used the topic of koi fish to talk with Situ Qinglan. Xen Lu could not get a word in, but Miss Ning who was with him, noticed it and pulled Xen Lu to the side. Xen Lu was puzzled, "We are talking, why are you pulling me? Sister Situ is still there." Miss Ning whispered to her, "Hush, you silly girl. Didn't you see that second master Qi is too lazy to care about you and me? He's here for Miss Situ. If we stand on the side won't we be in the way?" The two stood far away. Xen Lu turned back to look at Qi Mingxiu and Situ Qinglan, and felt that second master Qi was very attentive tonight. She turned back to look at the bridge and there were all kinds of young men and women. She did not know when but there were a few more pairs of figures. "Tiske," she spat and rolled her eyes, "how boring, if I knew this would happen I would not have come." Miss Ning ignored her and only held her hand to stop her from running around. She casually looked in the direction of the bridge as if she was looking for something. "What are you looking for?" Xen Lu asked her. Miss Ning was born in a scholarly family, and she was also a generous person. She was also Xan Lu's best friend, so she honestly said, I am not like you who can go out every day. I am always cooped up at home and can only go out in a sedan chair. There are many people in the capital, but I have only heard of them but have never seen them. It is rare to have a chance tonight, so I want to feast my eyes. Oh. Xan Lu was curious. So, who do you want to see? Miss Ning pursed her lips and smiled. She moved closer to her ear and said, there are a few outstanding women in the capital. I have seen most of them, such as Mingyue of the Yin family, Zizhu of the Rui family, and Princess Shiwen of the Xiang Palace. As for this man, I have a few that I want to see with my own eyes, to see if they are worthy of their name. The first one is Taoist Jing Qin, who has recently become famous. He is the youngest academician of the Imperial Historian Academy, the son of Yun Hua Yi and Princess Lu Yu. What kind of immortal is he? The second one is the young master of the Shui family, who did not make a move in the capital 3 years ago and hid in the city for a while. He became famous at a young age. I have heard that he is the most elegant person in Anling, but I don't know if he is really unique or not. The third one is the young king of medicine Zhu Qingjue. I want to see if this madman of the capital has 3 heads and 6 arms. Xan Lu listened and laughed. She pinched her arm and said, I have seen all 3 of them. Why do you suddenly sound strange after you mention them? Miss Ning glanced at her. That's good. When you see them later, point them out to me. That's nothing. Xan Lu's eyes turned and swept across the bridge. She looked into the distance and her eyes lit up. She quickly pointed to the shore. See, the person you want to see is here. Miss Ning followed her finger and looked to the shore. Her vision was instantly taken away by a white robe. She saw that the person was tall, and his sleeves were fluttering in the wind. He had a white face without a beard, and his handsome appearance could be vaguely seen. He was like a white crane standing alone and also like a cool breeze. Oh, this is Academician Jing. Miss Ning's eyes were full of admiration. She nodded and said, this kind of grace only Daozi can match it. Xan Lu said, Academician Jing is good-looking, and his temperament is also kind. I don't know how many female students of the Imperial Historian's Library admire him, openly and secretly trying to get close to him. That Miss Zhan of the Zhan family that I told you about a few days ago, the one that just entered the Celestial Commissioner as a female official. She has always had ideas about Academician Jing. I don't know if she came today. Miss Ning came back to her senses and said, you women of aristocratic families are all bold and don't know shame. Pa, I don't know who specially came to see men. Xan Lu reached out to twist her waist. Miss Ning dodged and retreated at the same time. The two of them were laughing and joking at the end of the bridge. No one paid attention and they accidentally bumped into someone. Oh. Miss Ning stepped on a foot and heard a cry of pain. Xan Lu pulled her back and steadied her. She quickly turned around to apologize, but before she could say sorry, she heard a tender rebuke. What kind of place is this? You dare to mess around? Do you have any rules? Coincidentally, the person that Miss Ning stepped on was none other than Zhan Shuiyuan that Xan Lu had just mentioned. When Xan Lu looked up and saw who it was, he frowned. He held his handkerchief and retorted, whether we have rules or not, it's not up to you to teach us. The bridge is so wide, who told you to get close to us? Zhan Shuiyuan also recognized Xan Lu and knew that she was on good terms with Yu Shu. He hated her and sneered, it seems that some people not only don't know the rules but are also unreasonable. Birds of a feather really do flock together. What kind of people make friends with what kind of people? Xan Lu wasn't someone to be trifled with. Hearing her insinuations, he raised his eyebrows. What do you mean? Seeing that the two of them were about to quarrel, Miss Ning got a headache and tried to persuade them. On the other side, the girls that came with Zhan Shuiyuan also approached. The one who was surrounded in front and behind was actually Princess Shiwen. What are you shouting for? Don't say a word. Are you afraid that you won't make a fool of yourself? Tonight, Shiwen had really put on makeup. She was wearing a wide-sleeved purple dress, and her figure was delicate and competitive. Her hair was combed into a flying immortal bun, and there were peach blossoms on her forehead. Her face was delicate and beautiful, and a priceless purple jade tassel ring hung around her snow-white neck. She was dazzling. As soon as she appeared, she stole the limelight on this half of the bridge, making all the other girls pale in comparison. Even though Xan Lu was dissatisfied, she knew that she couldn't confront her directly, so she stepped forward with Miss Ning to greet her. Seeing that they had admitted defeat, Zhan Shuiyuan was proud. She walked back to Shiwen and her expression became a little flattering. Princess, there are so many people on this bridge. Why don't we go to the greenhouse over there and sit down? Shiwen glanced at her but didn't agree. Instead she asked Xinlu, where is Yu Xuanzi? Xinlu had more or less heard about the conflict between Yushu and Princess Shiwen, so he said vaguely, I came early and didn't see her. Shiwen smiled and gently waved the beauty fan in her hand. She turned her head and spoke to a beautiful girl behind her, who was not inferior to her. Sister Zizhu, you probably haven't seen our female Yu Xuanzi. You are always in your boudoir, so you probably haven't heard of her. This year Yu Xuanzi is in charge of Cousin Rue's Wangji Tower. She is close to Cousin Rue. It seems that she lives in the restaurant and often goes in and out with Cousin Rue. Hearing this, Rue Zizhu immediately frowned. As early as a month ago, she heard from the elders in her family that they intended to betroth her to the eldest son of the Shui family. She also had some young girl feelings for Shui Rue, so when she heard that another girl was too close to her future husband, how could she like her? Xanlu also frowned. He heard the ambiguity in Shiwen's words, which implied that Yushu had bad conduct, so he said in a low voice, Princess, don't listen to nonsense. Her family lives in the south of the city. Why does she live in the restaurant? Besides, we all know that she is brother and sister with the eldest brother of the Shui family. Brother and sister? Shiwen covered her mouth with the fan and laughed so hard that her shoulders shook. A cold light flashed in her eyes. No wonder I heard her call him brother so affectionately. This time Rue Zizhu's expression became even worse. Miss Ning looked at her, quietly pulled Xanlu's back, and dragged the ignorant Rue Zizhu away with Shiwen and Xiao Ci. After they left, Shiwen held Rue Zizhu's arm and whispered to her, listen to what I said. Don't ignore it. Watch carefully. This female Yu Xuanzi is going to fight for the golden jade hibiscus tonight. If Cousin Rue is bewitched by her, what should you do? Rue Zizhu bit her lip and couldn't help but worry. Everyone knew that the 2 golden jade hibiscus at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet was a heaven-sent marriage. As long as the man and the woman were willing, it would be a good thing. How about this, I'll fight for the golden jade hibiscus, and you help me secretly. Later, listen to my instructions and make sure she doesn't get any benefits. Rue Zizhu was already upset and didn't know what to do. Hearing Shiwen's suggestion, she hesitated for a moment, then nodded and agreed. Chapter 516. While Princess Shiwen and Rue Zizhu were whispering to each other, Miss Ning and Xanlu retreated and walked off the bridge. Not long after, they saw a group of young men walking over from the stone path of the garden. The man in front saw Xanlu and stopped to greet him. Xanlu, I didn't expect you to be invited this year. Is there no one else in Anling? Isn't the gentleman's lotus banquet supposed to invite beauties who look like hibiscus flowers? You think you're a beauty? Feng Zhamiao? Xanlu was surprised for a moment, then he reacted and retorted sarcastically, yeah, is there no one else in Anling? The gentleman's banquet of hibiscus only invites gentlemen. What kind of gentleman are you? Miss Ning recognized Feng Zhamiao and knew he was the young master of General Feng's family. Seeing the two of them bickering, she wasn't surprised. Her gaze fell on the person behind and her eyes lit up for the second time tonight. She saw that the handsome young master was wearing a green silk robe with a jade belt around his waist. His robe was buttoned with beads, a silk scarf was tied around his head, and he held a fan in his hand. His figure was tall and straight, and he looked like a scholar with an indescribable gentleness and elegance. This scholarly young master had a handsome face, especially a pair of black eyes that shone like stars under his thick black eyebrows. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed to be filled with love but were fickle. Looking at him would make one fall in love with him, but looking at him would make one fearful. Who knew how many infatuated girls had fallen in love with him? Miss Ning only glanced up and down, then quickly retracted her gaze. She was already certain that this scholarly young master with peach blossom eyes was one of the 3 people she wanted to see. She had seen Taoist Jing Chen before, and he didn't seem to be as arrogant as the rumors said. He must be the eldest son of the Shui family, the junior minister of the Supreme Court who had solved many big cases, Shui Qingbai. Sure enough, after arguing with Feng Zhamiao for a while, Xanlu turned his head and saw Shui Rue. He looked for him to judge. Cousin Shui is also here, can you say something fair? I'm not a beauty, but can Feng Zhamiao be considered a gentleman? Shui Rue is looking around for Yushu when he was called by Xanlu. He turned around and said to her, those who attend the hibiscus gentleman's banquet are not all beauties and gentlemen. Whether Zhamiao is a gentleman or not I am not sure, but he is definitely not a vile person. Feng Zhamiao raised her head proudly. Yes, I'm not a gentleman nor am I a villain. Although Xan Lu was dissatisfied, she could not find fault with it. She could only pout. Of course you are speaking up for him. Shui Rui smiled and did not refute. At this moment, a light laughter came from behind. If Lord Shui says it like this, then are you a gentleman or a villain? Everyone turned to see a man walk out from a corner of the flower pond. He wore green robes and had a blue ribbon tied around his hair. As he walked, his sleeves fluttered in the wind. He wore a pair of white boots, and as he stepped on the dirt, the crescent moon behind him illuminated the people in front of him. Seeing this person, Miss Ning's eyes brightened once more. That person had just stopped right before Shui Rui. Two men of different appearances, yet similarly outstanding, stood together, and it instantly drew the attention of the young women that wandered in the vicinity, and there were even people on the bridgehead that looked over. Shui Rui was clearly aware that Zhu Qingjue was targeting him. He frowned. It had to be known that the two of them had always minded their own business and never provoked each other. Whether I am a gentleman or a villain, how can I judge for myself? In second young Master Zhu's opinion, am I a villain or a gentleman? Shui Rui raised an eyebrow, asking Zhu Qingjue in response. Zhu Qingjue bluntly said, in my opinion, you are not a villain, but you are far from being a gentleman. Hearing this, before Shui Rui could say anything, Feng Zhaomiao was the first to speak. What do you mean by that? You say that my brother Rui is not a gentleman, but are you? Zhu Qingjue paid no attention to him, and he stared straight at Shui Rui as he said, Shui Qingbi, do you dare compete with me at the gentleman's hibiscus banquet tonight? If I'm able to seize the gold jade hibiscus, then you have to admit that you're a despicable person in public. Shui Rui's eyes widened, and if I win? Then I will be the villain. Zhu Qingjue nonchalantly said. Shui Rui smiled coldly and slapped the fan in his hand. I don't need you to be a villain. I just want you to honestly answer a few of my questions. Feng Zhaomiao was scratching his ears and cheeks. Seeing that Shui Rui was about to agree before he could stop him, he saw Zhu Qingjue raise his right hand. 5 strikes is the agreement. Whoever disobeys loses. Shui Rui raised his palm. Pa, pa, pa. The two struck 3 times and established the agreement. The surrounding audience was shocked and started discussing. Lu Yi stood in the flower house, still angry from Zhu Qingjue's teasing. He said to the person behind him, I want to see them fight each other. You better perform well and ruin their plan. 11th Prince, don't worry. I know. Shiwen held Rui Ziju's arm as they stood at the bridgehead. When she heard Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue's conversation from afar, she frowned and turned her head to ask Chui Xan behind her, second young Master Zhu and cousin Rui, what's going on? Is there anything that I don't know about recently? When did they become enemies? Chui Xan was also confused. I haven't heard of them fighting. Shiwen thought it was strange. She looked around and couldn't see Zhan Shuiyuan. She asked, where is Miss Zhan? Someone pointed angrily towards the shore. Shiwen looked in that direction and saw Zhan Shuiyuan standing in front of the white-robed Jing Qin, saying something with a shy expression. Disdain flashed in Shiwen's eyes. She didn't say anything else and turned to smile at Rui Ziju. Cousin is over there. Aren't you going to talk to him? No need. Rui Ziju shook her head shyly. Shiwen pulled her close and whispered into her ear, what are you afraid of? Little sister is so beautiful tonight that even the gods would be moved. Not to mention that cousin is immortal. Let's go, I'll go with you to see him and give you some courage. Rui Ziju was indeed a smart girl. She didn't pale in the slightest when she stood next to the beautiful Shiwen. The earl's mansion was full of gold and silver. A pampered daughter wouldn't lose out to the golden branches and jade leaves. The string of priceless purple jade tassels on Shiwen's neck was very eye-catching, but in fact, it couldn't compare to the origin of the hibiscus water droplet on Rui Ziju's forehead. This was the relic of Empress Ningxuan, the founder of the Da'an kingdom. In the capital city there were several women who used it. Even the imperial concubines and princesses would be jealous. Rui Ziju was brought in front of Shui Rui by Shiwen with Chui Xan following unhurriedly. Brother Rui, second young Master Zhu, I heard you two making a bet from afar. I wonder who will get the 2 gold and jade hibiscus flowers tonight. After the confrontation between Shui Rui and Zhu Qingjue, the two didn't leave. Seeing Shiwen, Shui Rui just nodded lightly. Shiwen thought that he was still angry because of the dispute over the death of the 10th princess at Wangjilu last time. She didn't care about his cold attitude. She smiled and went to talk to Zhu Qingjue. Second young Master Zhu only talks about gentlemen. Just boring. Why don't you also evaluate the beauties at tonight's banquet? Zhu Qingjue crossed his arms and looked back at her. He looked at the two beauties in front of him. There was no ripple in his eyes. He hooked his lips and said, I haven't seen many beauties. I can't tell whether they are good or bad. As he said this, he turned to Shui Rui and raised his hand to signal. I heard that Lord Shui has been a playboy since he was young. You know more about the word beauties than I do. I wonder how many beauties at this banquet caught your eye. I'd like to hear the details. Zhu Qingjue clearly wanted to make things difficult for Shui Rui tonight. How could he casually evaluate beauties? If he was right, he would have a reputation of being a playboy. If he was wrong, he would offend a group of narrow-minded women. The men and women at the banquet didn't know what was going on. When they heard that the eldest young master of the Shui family wanted to evaluate beauties, they couldn't help but come forward. Pairs of beautiful eyes looked at him, waiting to hear what he had to say. Okay, let cousin Rui be the judge. We're all ears. Shiwen gently pushed Rui Zizhu and secretly winked at her. Rui Zizhu blushed, but she slowly straightened her back. Shui Rui swept a glance at Zhu Qingjue, who was looking for trouble, and then he unhurriedly opened his ink-folding fan. From near to far, he saw that in the brightly lit flower garden, there were numerous beautiful faces in fragrant cosmetics and fresh silk clothes, all of them contending with each other for beauty, and it was a scene of great beauty. 3 years ago, when he was admiring Xiaoai, he was still in the mood to appreciate it. Later on, he was blinded by one of the flowers and suffered the consequences. 3 years later, when he attended the banquet again, he had already found a female confidant. Even if she was beautiful enough to captivate the birds and beasts, or to obscure the moon and flowers, it had nothing to do with him. At this time, facing the expectant gazes of the crowd, he looked at the bridge in the distance and was lost in thought. When he arrived at the head of the Permitha bridge, a floating light entered his eyes. His heart suddenly moved and his lips moved. The so-called beauty uses flowers as her appearance, birds as her voice, and the moon as her spirit. Everyone was engrossed in the story, and no one noticed that a dazzling figure had appeared on the bridge. She was dressed in a long gauze dress that was whiter than snow. She was slim and slender, and she was strolling leisurely in the courtyard like clouds and mist, like a light smoke. Willow as her form, jade as her bones, and ice and snow as her muscles. The person on the bridge had dark clouds hanging down her temples. Her hair was covered with silver pearls and a red dot fell on the center of her forehead. Her eyebrows were slanted. With autumn water as her form and poetry as her heart, I am inseparable. It was her dazzling and translucent body that was shining and moving. It was her eyes that were like cold stars that stood proudly above the crowd. It was not because of her beauty, but because of her unparalleled heart. However, a beauty is not someone in the eyes but someone in the heart. Shui Rui's lips curled into a faint smile. At this time there was only one figure in his eyes. At this time the crowd also noticed that something was wrong and turned around. With just a glance, their attention was captured by the woman who was wearing a glowing silhouette. For a moment, everyone's eyes flashed with amazement. They were a little dazzled and mistakenly thought that they had seen Shui Hibiscus Fairy in her human form. It was really that the beauty was covered from head to toe with a layer of moonlight, and it was too unreal. The first to regain his senses was not Shui Rui, but Zhu Qingjue. He squinted his eyes at the woman who came late. He felt that she looked familiar, but he could not remember who she was. It was only when she walked closer to the crowd that he suddenly remembered and blurted out, "It's you." Yu Shu was holding a long silk shawl with one hand, revealing a string of pink crystals on her wrist. She had to straighten her neck to prevent the string of pearls from slipping off her head. Along the way she was secretly complaining, but she did not forget Pei Jing's repeated warnings. She slowly moved towards the crowd. Chapter 517. It's you? Yu Shu had a good memory, especially when it came to people. Moreover, with Zhu Qingjue's appearance, it would be hard for her to forget him even if she only saw him once. It was very easy for her to recognize that the handsome man in a green robe by Shui Rui's side was the chess player she'd met in the pergola at the corner of the garden after she'd been promoted in the Dual Yang Association and went to the Directorate of Astronomy to retrieve her brush. Seeing the expression on Yu Shu's face, Shui Rui retracted his gaze from her and turned to look at Zhu Qingjue. He was a little surprised that these two people actually knew each other. Zhu Qingjue did not care about the surrounding gazes. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Yu Shu for a moment. Suddenly he smiled and turned back to meet Shui Rui's gaze. A beauty is indeed a beauty. I wonder if this beauty in front of me is also Lord Shue's sweetheart? As soon as these words were spoken, the surroundings went silent. Everyone present had heard Shui Rui's evaluation earlier, and those with discerning gazes were able to discern that his words were directed at Yushu, who'd arrived late. So when Zhu Qingjue asked this question, it caused everyone to be unable to help but think too much. Originally, the thoughts of men and women at the Hibiscus Gentleman's Banquet were pardonable. Even if it was said, it would not be a laughing stock. At most, it would cause a few words of discussion. Therefore, no one felt that Zhu Qingjue's sudden question was wrong. However, the expressions of the two people involved, Shui Rui and Yushu, changed slightly. The former looked at the latter, and the latter frowned. Shui Rui sighed in his heart. His face was impeccable. He walked to Yushu's side and stood beside her. He turned to Zhu Qingjue and sneered, "Second young Master Zhu, please be careful with your words. This is my sworn sister, Dian Maiden Yushu. Don't you know her?" No one noticed that Jing Qin, who was being pestered by Zhan Shuiyuan, moved his ears and looked back. Hearing Shui Rui's explanation, Yushu heaved a sigh of relief. She glanced sideways at his dignified and handsome face and felt a little awkward in her heart. They were clearly lovers, but they acted like thieves and couldn't let anyone know. Zhu Qingjue obviously did not know where Yushu came from. When she heard this, she looked a little surprised. Her gaze changed and she looked at Yushu. "You're the female fortune teller who's ranked third in 2 rankings?" Most of the men and women present recognized Yushu, but there were also those from noble families who had only heard of her name but had never seen her before. Now that they knew the name of the beauty in white in front of them, they were as surprised as Zhu Qingjue. Some people were puzzled. He had heard that this new female fortune teller was a shrew who dared to challenge Han Wenguang, but he had never heard that she was such a rare beauty. Yushu's first impression of Zhu Qingjue was mediocre. She didn't have a good impression of Zhu Qingjue at all. Thus, she nodded her head indifferently. Seeing her attitude, Zhu Qingjue's interest in her eyes grew stronger. "Hehe, so it's you, Swansea. It's my fault that I didn't recognize you when I saw you changed your clothes." A sweet laugh interrupted them. Shiwen held her beauty fan and moved 2 steps forward. She looked at Yushu, who was dressed in white and crystal, which highlighted her cold temperament. She secretly gritted her teeth. She suggested that Shui Rui judge the beauty, but she didn't expect that Yushu came at the right time. Accompanied by Shui Rui's beauty theory, she stole all the limelight as soon as she appeared. Accompanied by Shui Rui's beauty theory, Yushu successfully stole all the limelight as soon as she appeared. Instead, she, the main character, was left to the side and became a wallflower. "Sister Zizhu, come and meet her. This is the one I mentioned to you before." Shiwen waved at Rui Zizhu, who was also left out in the cold. She pointed at Yushu and introduced her to Rui Zizhu. Rui Zizhu pursed her lips and looked at the woman who stood next to Shui Rui. She felt that the woman looked familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen her before. Because of Shiwen's words, she was unhappy. However, due to her upbringing, she forced herself to smile at Yushu. "Nice to meet you, Swansea." She didn't know Yushu, and Yushu wasn't familiar with her either. She only remembered that they had met by chance in the Xan family's big exchange shop. She didn't know that the Shui family and the Count's mansion were privately discussing the marriage of their children. She also didn't know that this beautiful girl in front of her was Shui Rui's grandfather's granddaughter-in-law. "This is..." Yushu didn't know how to address Shui Rui, so she turned to ask Shui Rui. Shui Rui didn't even blink and said to her, "This is the daughter of Count Zhongyong's mansion, Miss Rui. You know Rui Lin. This is his sister." Yushu nodded and greeted Rui Zizhu. She was too lazy to pay attention to the pretentious Shiwen. Fortunately, she didn't have to bow to a princess because of her status as a 4th-rank female fortune teller. At this moment, the spectators nearby saw that there was no more excitement, so they dispersed in 2s and 3s. "The banquet is about to start. Lord Shui, don't forget the bet with me." Zhu Qingjue threw a sentence at Shui Rui and glanced at Yushu. Then she flung her sleeves and strode away. Xan Lu anxiously moved forward. "Lotus Room, let's go over there to talk." Yushu looked at Shui Rui. Shui Rui warmly smiled and said, Don't go too far. Guifeng Yang and Wang Fei should be arriving soon." The two often saw each other in private. There were too many people tonight, so it wasn't suitable for them to be together. Xan Lu pulled Yushu to the side, his eyes shining as he looked her up and down. He first stared at her face for a long time as if it was the first day he knew her. "Quickly look, I almost didn't recognize you. I say, Lotus Room, did you change your face?" Before going out, Yushu looked in the mirror and knew that tonight's makeup was really brilliant. Her facial features were delicate, but her eyebrows were too light, the bridge of her nose was too straight, and the shape of her lips was not plump and delicate. But under her suggestion and the skillful hands of Rouge Lady, these flaws were corrected. She raised the end of her eyebrows, raised the corner of her eyes and drew the line of her lips. After a careful grooming, she turned the rotten into the magical. Her original 5 points of beauty were increased by 10 points. Xanlu was curious enough and turned his attention to other parts of her body. He clicked his tongue and tilted his head to Miss Ning. What's the value of the purple jade bracelet? What's there to see with the hibiscus jade? Have you seen what she is wearing? Ning, let me tell you, these are all treasures. Just the white crystal bead in my hand is envied by everyone who has seen it. There are many people who are willing to pay money to buy it. Even this can't be obtained. She dares to make such a complete set with great fanfare. It's purely because she is afraid that people won't be jealous and impatient. Miss Ning is a rich young lady who has seen the world. She gets closer and looks at the whole set of gem carvings on Yushu's body. She is even more amazed. The string of sparkling and translucent gemstones woven into Yushu's hair was actually made up of many delicate and small hibiscus flowers with different postures, and countless round and flat hibiscus lotus leaves were connected together. What was even more amazing was the cinnabar-like redness on her forehead. It was actually a fingertip-sized red lotus carved into dozens of petals, imprinted on her forehead and eyebrows, glistening with every frown and smile of hers. Then there are the pink, white, gold and red on her ears, neck, wrists and waist. They are all shaped with water lotuses, hibiscus flower bones and cold fragrance. Each of them is a rare treasure she has never seen before. You are right. I'm afraid that no one will be jealous. Yushu glances at Xanlu with a smile. She holds her hair with one hand and rotates her sore neck. She is happily thinking that after the hibiscus gentleman's banquet, she will give the set of jewelry she is wearing tonight to Pei Jing and resell it. What kind of sky-high price will she be able to get? Not to mention that she was a money grubber, she was really short of money these days. Yishui was a profession that burned a lot of money. If she couldn't make ends meet, how was she going to support her family? She had to take care of her parents and children. After talking for a while, Yushu finds that Sidu Qinglan is not there, so she asks Xanlu. You mean Sidu? She was with us just now. Xanlu looks left and right, overlooking the bridge corridor and points to Yushu. Look, she is over there. There are many shadows on the bridge. Yushu can't tell which is which. She takes a glance and passes. But when she turns her head, she meets a pair of eyes that are silently watching her. Her smile is halved. After a glance, she tilts her head to avoid it. Jing Chen looks at Yushu's slender figure from afar. His eyes and mind are filled with her shadow. He only feels that tonight she is very much like the water lotus fairy in the legendary story. She is indescribably beautiful, a side that he has never seen before. Zhan Shuiyuan stands beside Jing Chen and talks for a long time, but she doesn't get any response. She notices that Jing Chen is looking at something strange. She looks in the direction of his eyes. Without any effort, she is sure that where Jing Chen is looking at, there is also a white dress. That is, Yuswanzi? Zhan Shuiyuan doesn't have good eyesight like Jing Chen. She takes a hard look for a while. If she doesn't see Xanlu beside her, she really can't recognize that it is Yushu. Seeing Jing Chen nod, Zhan Shuiyuan's eyes turn sour. She can't help muttering, what bad luck. There is still someone wearing white on such a happy day. Jing Chen lowered her head to look at herself. What entered her eyes was a spotless, fair skin. Zhan Shuiyuan realizes that she said something wrong. She blushes in embarrassment. I'm not talking about you. Academician Jing, don't misunderstand. Jing Chen frowns. He puts on a serious face and says seriously, in Taoism, white is the best color. It is said to be simple and unadorned. The so-called white funeral among the people is just a Confucian practice. The origin of Yi and Taoism are actually of the same origin. Those who learn Yi are half a member of Taoism. You are also a descendant of an aristocratic family. Why do you follow the Confucian practice? Zhan Shuiyuan is speechless after being lectured by him. Jing Chen sees that she is dull and not clever at all. He knows that she is a common person who can't be enlightened. He shakes his head and doesn't want to talk to her. He turns around and walks away. He doesn't go far. He can see her just by turning his head. Tonight, there are so many people, so it is easy for something to happen. Big Tiao has warned him to be careful of sneak attacks. He is also afraid that someone will die. So he has to keep an eye on Zhan Shuiyuan, the target, in case she is killed. After a cup of tea, Xan Lu is still coaxing and pestering Yu Shu. After the banquet, he will take off the pink hibiscus flower bracelet from her hand and let her play with it for a few days. Yu Shu is not moved at all. Instead, she promises a white crystal pendant to the good-tempered Miss Ning. The night is completely open. It is 7:15. Just when everyone is chatting, a loud voice suddenly comes from the Dingbo Lake. It is the eunuch who guards the east gate. Chapter 5:18. Imperial Consort Shu and Imperial Consort Shu have arrived. Hearing the voice, the entire garden was silent. Like everyone else, Yu Shu stopped what she was doing and turned her head to look. She saw that at the end of the bridge in the distance, clusters of colorful lights suddenly lit up. It was a group of palace maids carrying colorful lights to clear the way. At this time, on Dingbo Lake, there was only the sound of music coming from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Everyone bowed and quietly waited for the two nobles from the palace to enter the banquet. Some people muttered in their hearts. Previously they were guessing who would accompany Imperial Consort Shui, but they didn't expect that it would be this master. A while ago, there were some waves in the court because of the fight for the position of crown prince. Originally, the most popular 7th prince was the son of Imperial Consort Shu, but he was trampled on by the 9th prince, who had returned to the capital for less than a year at the Double Sons meeting. He used this to gain some momentum and faintly showed signs of competing with the 7th prince. Although there were no rumors in the palace that the birth mothers of these two princes, Gui Feinyang and Shu Feinyang, were not on good terms with each other, those who were smart all understood the principle of one mountain cannot accommodate two tigers. These two concubines would sooner or later be irreconcilable enemies. Yu Shu had been taken care of by Imperial Consort Shui in Huajin Garden, so she was very curious about Shui Rui, her aunt who was the second in command of the harem. Thus, when others bowed their heads and waited respectfully, she quietly raised her eyes and looked in the direction of the people coming from the bridge. Not long after, the colorful lights in the hands of the palace maids came into view, accompanied by bursts of unknown flower fragrance. Where the light and shadow came from, there was an entourage of people crowding in front and behind, and the flowers were bright and beautiful. In the first place were two graceful and luxuriously dressed beauties. Seeing the two, Yu Shu's eyes widened and she was secretly tongue-tied. It wasn't that she hadn't seen beautiful girls before. There were those who were as delicate as Xia Jiangmin, as elegant as Ji Xingxuan, and as sweet as Princess Shiwen. Which one of them wasn't at the very top? However, these girls who were more delicate than flowers were still immature in the end. Their so-called beauty couldn't even compare to the two she was seeing right now. Today she finally understood what it meant to be an outstanding beauty. On the left was a concubine wearing a red peony dress embroidered with 12 green pythons. She looked to be no more than 30 years old. She was a natural beauty with delicate eyebrows, delicate skin, and a voluptuous figure. The most beautiful thing was her pair of lazily squinting eyes. Her rouge was rosy, and when she blinked, it was enough to cause one's heart to flutter. The one on the right was dressed in the red robes of Xiang Fei. She had a head full of golden hairpins, and a huge mermaid pearl was placed on her forehead, reflecting the peach blossoms on her face. Her skin was as clear as snow, and her lips were slightly pursed. Her expression was dignified, noble and inviolable. From their clothes, Yu Shu could tell that the languid consort on the left was noble consort Shui, and the slightly serious one on the right was consort Shu. Receive the emperor. Welcome, Imperial Consort Shu and Imperial Consort Shu. All the men and women in the garden bowed and kowtowed. No one dared to be disrespectful. Yu Shu also withdrew her gaze and bowed obediently. Dispense with the formalities. Raise your heads and let Ben Gong recognize who you are. Noble Consort Shui spoke in a clear voice. Seeing the crowd around her stand up, she stood high up and swept her gaze across the crowd. Her gaze paused a few times and her eyes flickered. She turned her head and said to Consort Shu, "Every time I see these young people, the delicate ones and the young ones, they all feel that we are old. Mimi, don't you think so?" Consort Shu did not smile and said methodically, "Jie has a technique to preserve your looks. I can't see how you look old." Noble Consort Shui laughed, and the corners of her eyes curled up. In an instant, her face lit up the surroundings, and she was incomparably beautiful. "Consorts, it's time. Why don't we start the banquet early?" A beautiful woman walking behind Noble Consort Shui asked. Only then did Yu Shu notice the person next to the two beautiful consorts. Looking at that woman, she looked somewhat similar to noble consort Shui. She thought that she must be Xiang Wang Fei. There's no hurry. Ben Gong has seen many unfamiliar people and is curious. Let's get to the bottom of it first, noble consort Shui said and waved at Shiwen. Wenwen, come over and point out the people for Ben Gong. Yes, consort. Commandery Princess Shiwen obediently walked forward and bowed to consort Shu. She took over the position of the palace maid and supported noble consort Shui's arm. Which one is the daughter of the count's residence? The first person noble consort Shui mentioned was Rui Zizhu. This caused Shiwen's eyes to darken, but she quickly pointed her out. The one in pink is little sister Zizhu. Rui Zizhu hurriedly lowered her head and bowed. She was a little flustered but not rude. Noble consort Shui looked her up and down and didn't ask much. She lazily shifted her gaze and asked Shiwen and the others, asking her to point them out one by one. Yu Shu and Miss Xen Liaoning stood in the corner of the flower pond. When they heard noble consort Shui call out their names one by one, it would be a lie to say that she wasn't nervous at all. Noble consort Shui was Shui Rui's maternal aunt. Even if her relationship with Shui Rui was hidden in the dark, she couldn't help but feel a sense of awkwardness when meeting the family. Based on her intuition, she thought that noble consort Shui would definitely not miss her. Sure enough, just as she thought this, she heard noble consort Shui's voice. Who is that young lady in white? Shiwen saw that noble consort Shui pointed at Yu Shu and secretly pinched her nails. She faked a smile and said, "This is the famous diviner of Great Yan, miss you." Yu Shu stepped forward. "This lowly one Yu Shu greets Imperial Consort, greets Imperial Consort Shu, greets Princess Yang." Noble consort Shui looked at her more than she looked at the others. In the end she said, "I've heard of your abilities. I want to see them tonight. It's better if you don't hide your abilities." Yu Shu's eyelids twitched. She didn't know what noble consort Shui had heard from her, but she could only respectfully agree, Yu Shu doesn't dare. Shiwen saw that noble consort Shui looked at Yu Shu in a different light and was unhappy. She gently shook her arm and said coquettishly, "Your Highness, Wenwen has also carefully prepared a song. I'll present it later. You can't be biased. If no one can beat mine, then give me a golden jade hibiscus to play with." Princess Yang was stunned and looked at noble consort Shui, but saw that her older sister's expression didn't change. She teased, "Wenwen is also a young lady. Could it be that you already have someone in your heart and that's why you want this golden jade hibiscus?" Shiwen pouted her red lips and pretended to be willful. "Who said that only people who have someone in their heart want this golden jade hibiscus? I just think it's rare, so I snatch it to play with. Can't I?" "Nonsense," Princess Yang reprimanded first. "How can the golden jade hibiscus be given to you to play with? Quickly give up your evil ideas. Don't make trouble." Shiwen immediately looked aggrieved. She held noble consort Shui's hand tightly. "Your Highness, Wenwen also came to the banquet with an invitation. Why can others fight for it but I can't? I'm not convinced. Please make a decision." Before noble consort Shui spoke, consort Shu, who had been silent for a long time, said unhurriedly, "According to the rules, if you can fight for it, I'll give it to you. What do you think, sister?" Noble consort Shui patted the back of Shiwen's hand and said with a smile, "That's right. If you can really fight for it, I'll give you one according to the rules. If you can't be shameless. Do you hear me?" "Your Highness is enlightened." Shiwen's face lit up with joy. She turned her head and stuck out her tongue at Princess Yang, but she didn't care about the stiffness on her mother's face. This little episode did not arouse the suspicions of the people present. Yu Shu knew what Shiwen was planning. Seeing her scheme, she snorted. In order to escape the fate of marrying to the Eastern Commandery, Shiwen did not hesitate to drag Shui Rui into the water. She used the death of the 10th princess as a threat to force Shui Rui to give in. This selfishness became the disaster of love for Shui Rui today. If they hadn't seen through her scheme early on, Shui Rui would have been caught unprepared by Shiwen tonight. Now, she had already calculated that the 10th princess died of self-harm. Shui Rui had untied the knot in his heart. Shiwen was destined to draw water with a bamboo basket and waste her efforts. The moon rose above the willow trees. Noble consort Shui, consort Shu, and the other nobles sat in the waterside pavilion by the lake. The young men and women who came to attend the banquet finally took their seats. They either took their seats in the greenhouse on the two sides or stood in groups of 2s and 3s nearby, watching the lanterns on Dinghua Lake and waiting for noble consort Shui to host tonight's banquet. Last year at the Gentleman's Hibiscus Banquet, there were Western fireworks for the entire night. Ben Gong wasn't able to be there, but I heard that you children all like it very much. Originally, I wanted to prepare one this year, but the Shuwu workshop didn't have enough fire powder, so I could only give up. In the waterside pavilion, noble consort Shui sat in the main seat. The sound of her voice traveled far. Noble consort Shui has worked hard. If this old woman wants to say, there's nothing to see with those gaudy Western fireworks. It's just for liveliness. It's too noisy. Duchess Jing's wife was older and half her hair was white. She occupied a seat by herself. The servant girls behind her massaged her shoulders. After she finished speaking, many people agreed. Consort Shu sat in the second seat. She turned her body and asked, "Then what did elder sister prepare for the banquet tonight? It can't be that we're just going to sit around and do nothing, right?" Noble consort Shui leaned against the couch. Seeing that everyone was looking at her and waiting for her to speak, she no longer kept them in suspense. She turned her head and lightly nodded to the main palace maid standing behind her. Yu Shu and Xan Lu and Miss Ning were in the second greenhouse on the right side of the waterside pavilion. They listened to the people around them discuss the competition for the gold and jade hibiscus. There were 2 gold and jade hibiscus. At the end of the banquet, one would go to the most outstanding woman of the night, while the other would go to the most valiant man of the night. This man and woman, with the gold and jade hibiscus in their hands, could choose a good marriage of their own. As for how the man and woman would compete, it would depend on the intentions of the host of the banquet. In previous years, the men and women who wanted to compete for the gold and jade hibiscus would show off their skills at the banquet. They would use all sorts of tricks to win the favor of the nobles at the main guest seats. It was unknown if there were any new ideas this year. Yu Shu carried a plate of green grapes and sat on the railing with Xen Lu. She peeled the skin and put it into her mouth. At the same time, she pricked up her ears to listen to the specialties of the people around her. After listening for a while, she didn't find it strange. Most of the descendants of civil officials had to recite poems, paint and play music. Those who came from families of generals had to wield their swords and sabers. "What did you prepare in the lotus room?" Xen Lu asked. Yu Shu had no intention of competing. She really hadn't prepared anything in advance. She could only perfunctorily say, "I won't tell you for now." Xen Lu became even more curious after hearing this. She was about to ask more when suddenly she saw something out of the corner of her eye. She opened her mouth wide and hurriedly swallowed half a grape. She pointed to the far shore of Steady Wave Lake and pushed Yu Shu's arm to turn her head. "Quick look. Isn't that end on fire?" Yu Shu turned around and saw that on the other side of the dark and tranquil lake, a long streak of sparks shot up from the east, like a meteor falling to the ground. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.